Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if banished Naruto was Doctor Strange Marvel. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Sinbadth third and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. In the building of Konoha that housed the leader of the village, sitting behind an oak table with a stack of paperwork to his side, was an elderly man known to the people within the village as Hiruzen Sarutobi, the second ninja to earn the title of God of Shinobi, due to his mastery over all 5 of the elements in chakra, as well as fighting and surviving all 3 great shinobi wars. The years have gotten to him, which has made him weaker than he was while he was in his prime, but even though he was older, he still had enough strength and skill to fight as a cage effectively enough to protect the village. Hiruzen finished off the last of his paperwork with a small sigh and took out his smoking pipe before he placed some tobacco in it before lighting it up with a small flame from his finger. He breathed in the intoxicating smoke of tobacco and felt the stress of his paperwork leave when he blew out the smoke from his lungs. And believe it has been 13 years since that day, he thought as he turned his chair around to stare out of his window, which gave him a perfect view of the entire village in all of its glory. It's around 3 o'clock in the middle of the day, so he can easily see his shinobi and kunoichi jumping across the rooftops to get to their various destinations, while the civilians walk on the roads without a care in the world since they were not under attack of any sort. 13 years since Minato sealed away the Kyuubi into his own children. He swung his chair around again and stared at the pictures on the wall, which showed all of the cages that had been in charge throughout the years, smiling in their own separate frames. The first showed Hashirama Senju with a reassuring smile and wearing his red armor. The second was Tobirama Senju, Hashirama's brother, who was wearing his blue armor and head protector with a small smile, which was rare due to him lacking the ability to smile if Hiruzen remembered correctly. The third showed a younger version of himself, grinning and wearing his known black helmet and outfit. Hiruzen frowned when he looked at the picture beside his own, which showed the 4th Hokage Minato Namikaze, wearing his white robes and was smiling without a care in the world. The reason for Hiruzen's frown was because he had lost a lot of respect for Minato after what had happened 13 years ago. He could still remember that day like as if it was just yesterday, since it haunted his mind for all 13 years since it had happened. The day in which Minato Namikaze himself, with the help of his own wife, Kushina Uzumaki, sealed away the almighty Kyuubi into their recently born triplets. The day in which the village was saved from the rampaging Biju, but by then the damage had been done, and many were killed in the beast's attack, with those who survived it hating it for the carnage it had brought. The day in which Minato and Kushina willingly abandoned their only son, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. As Hiruzen sat there remembering that horrid day, he closed his eyes and thought back to the day in which Naruto was left alone. Flashback 13 years ago, day of Kyuubi's attack. Death and destruction was that could be explained as an accurate description for a large portion of the village. Buildings were now nothing more than rubble, fire spread over the still standing ones, slowly burning them down, and the bodies of both shinobi and civilians lined the streets. After the defeat of the Kyuubi, shinobi and kunoichi had been sent to relay the damage and to calm all the fires so they didn't spread to the intact parts of the village. Standing at the still intact gates of Konoha was the newly reappointed Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, his successor, Minato Namikaze, and the man's wife, Kushina Uzumaki. In both of Kushina's hands were both of her daughters, Natsumi and Narumi, both of who had taken the traits of their mother's hair. However, Natsumi has her father's blue eyes, while Narumi has her mother's purple ones. Both were wrapped in blankets and were sleeping without a worry in the world. "Minato, you can't be serious about this," exclaimed Hiruzen with widened eyes as he had just heard the plan that the man had for his own children. "I'm very serious, Hiruzen," replied Minato with a serious look on his face. "But he's your son. You can't just dump him like he's yesterday's garbage," retorted Hiruzen with a glare. "I'm not doing anything of the sort," replied Minato in a harsh tone. He would have thought that Hiruzen of all people would understand his reasoning for doing this, since by seeing the full picture, seeing the man was considered a genius by many. Natsumi and Narumi need important intensive training in order to gain control of Kyuubi's chakra, so I'm taking them to our estate in Fire Capital so we can train them safely. The people here will be scared of their power at first, so they will need time to master it, as well as the people need time to heal from this event. "What about Naruto? You're just going to leave him here on his own?" asked the elder Hokage, referring to the small bundle that was in his own arms. Unlike his sisters, Naruto took more of his father's features than his mother. He had shining blue eyes which were staring at everyone in curiosity, and had spiky blonde hair with bits and pieces of red, which is the only thing he took after his mother, other than her round face. While his sisters got the chakra that made up the Kyuubi, he had only the soul which was sealed within him, so that the beast's power could be controlled without its interference. Because he had the soul in him, he acquired a set of birthmarks that resembled whiskers on his face. Nobody noticed as Naruto's eyes narrowed as he stares at his mother and father. We can't bring Naruto with us. It's too dangerous for him to come with us since we have to focus on our daughters so that they can use the Kyuubi's power effectively," said Kushina, who then took a step back when Hiruzen's furious eyes turned their attention to her. "How exactly are his parents leaving him to live on his own not dangerous?" he asked them angrily with a glare that seemed like it could melt steel. We have to put all of our attention on Natsumi and Narumi because of their special chakra. Since Naruto only has the soul of the Kyuubi in him, he doesn't need any special training like they do. Plus with both Kumo and I was still angry with us after the previous war, they'll be gunning for us whenever they can by any means. With Naruto in the village, he'll be safe away from any assassins they send since they will be so focused on us. Especially since nobody will know of his heritage, answered Kushina, who jumps back a bit more when Kai poured out of Hiruzen in waves. The killing intent began to disturb Natsumi and Narumi, who both squirmed under the pressure of the Hokage's Kai. Naruto on the other hand was giggling away at Hiruzen and reaches up to him as a baby does to a parent when they are young. Noticing Naruto right away as he did this, Hiruzen held back on his Kai and placed a finger in between Naruto's small hands and smiled when the child began to squeeze and play around with it. Minato and Kushina sees this and both frown when they do. They felt a sense of loss since he wasn't doing that with them, but both pushed the feeling away, knowing that they had already made the needed plans to train their daughters and can't have their son taking away their attention from them. They plan to make up for lost time when they returned in the future. "Where will he stay while you're gone?" asked Hiruzen, glaring at the couple. "We can't have him staying with any of the clans since that would draw suspicion towards him and I'd prefer if nobody but you, Kakashi, Jiraiya, Orochimaru and Tsunade know about this, so it would be the best if he stays in the orphanage," said Minato, who starts to sweat when Hiruzen started to drill holes through his face with his eyes. "An orphanage? You want your own son to go through an orphanage? It's perfectly safe. It won't draw any suspicion, and when you tell everyone that Naruto has the soul of the Kyuubi inside him, then he'll be declared a hero among the populace since it's through him that they are safe. We'll train the girls until they turn 13 and then come back to the village to be with Naruto. I'll make sure that Jiraiya drops in here and now to check on Naruto for me," replied Minato with a grin, thinking that his plan couldn't possibly fail. He couldn't have Jiraiya staying in Leaf since he'll need his mentor to help him and Kushina train his daughters. From what they were told by the Toad Sage himself, one of the two were the child of prophecy that he spoke of since it stated that a child born in between leaves and trees, who holds massive otherworldly power, will be the one who either saves the world from destruction or causes the destruction of the world. Minato, Jiraiya and Kushina all believed that one of girls are the child of prophecy because they were both born in Konoha, which has forests everywhere around it, and both have Minato's sealing matrix on their stomachs, which must be the otherworldly power the elderly Toad Sage mentioned, since it was made with the aid of the Shinigami, was keeping Kyuubi's power at bay. Usually anyone who summoned the Shinigami would be forced to sacrifice their own soul as payment for doing so, but Kushina had been in possession of a family heirloom that had been passed down over the generations that protected the one who had it on their person from such payment. Tsunade decided to become the girl's personal doctor so they wouldn't get injured anytime soon. After all, she was their godmother. "You've truly became a fool, Minato. I honestly think I should have made the better decision and given my hat to Orochimaru instead of you," thought Hiruzen in distaste. "Fine, but you better leave now before I get sick at looking at you two and kick you out myself." Minato didn't like the way his grandfather figure was glaring at him and speaking badly about his plan, so he tried to place a comforting hand on his shoulder, but Hiruzen knocked it away with his other hand. "Don't you dare touch me. At this moment, you two have lost all of my respect." Since Minato and Kushina had packed away their luggage in a hurry, both were still dirty after the battle with the nine-tailed fox. This is seen from Minato, whose right sleeve is still covered in the blood of the Kyuubi, which had landed on his clothes when Gamabunta stabbed the beast with his sword, which led to blood splattering over his clothes. When Hiruzen swatted Minato's arm away from his own, Kyuubi's blood splattered all over Naruto's face, and some even gets into his mouth. Hiruzen glared at a frightened and sad Minato and wiped away the blood from the baby's face. He's too angry and busy wiping away the blood to notice Naruto's pupils change into fox-like slits before returning to normal. Minato saw how Hiruzen was glaring at him and Kushina and sighed before turning around. Maybe after the 13 years, he'll have calmed down, he thought in hope. "Let's go, Kushina. We have a lot of road to get through before we get to the capital," said Minato, preparing to jump to the trees towards the direction of the city. Kushina nods with a smile before going over to Hiruzen, who tenses, but she ignored it for now and crouched down to look into Naruto's blue eyes, who stare back at her own. "I'm sorry, my little sweetie, but we must do this for the benefit for everyone else." Hiruzen scoffs, but Kushina ignored him and continues. "But don't worry. We'll be back before you know it and we can be one big happy family," she cheered with a smile. Naruto just stared back at her without making a sound, which caused her to frown in disappointment. She had hoped that he would reach out for her like he did with Hiruzen, but he just stared at her as if she was a stranger of some sort. Let's go, Kushina. Jiraiya and Tsunade are most likely halfway there by now. We can't keep them waiting, said Minato, jumping up to the trees. Fine, hold your horses. I'm coming, said Kushina, and she takes a few steps back to jump away. She turned around to give her son one last look and makes sure to memorize all of him before leaping away to follow her husband. None of them noticed Naruto glaring at their backs as they left him alone. Flashback end. As he was ordered by his successor, Hiruzen announced to the village about the sealing of the Kyuubi into the three infants, as well as the situation as to why Minato had to leave the village with his daughters. Sadly, he had to tell the village that Naruto was an orphan that Minato picked and used to seal a part of the Kyuubi to the people so that enemy villages wouldn't take their moment of weakness to invade the village in order to kill Naruto because of his relation to the man. The villagers cheered for the daughters of their yondaime, and both have been officially declared as the princesses of Konoha. Much to Hiruzen's disgust, when he mentioned that Naruto contained the soul of the Kyuubi, they immediately demanded for his death. They wanted to kill the infant at the thought of him being the reincarnation of the Kyuubi. It didn't help that he has a set of whisker marks on his cheeks which did nothing to hide the fact. They wanted him dead so that the Kyuubi could never reform again to slaughter again. Plus, since the boy was said to be a clan-less orphan, then that meant that no one would miss him, so it was no skin off their bones and would in fact finish what their leader had started. He looked at the three picture frames on his desk and smiles at the first two, but it fell and he felt heartache once he saw the third picture. The first picture was taken by his secretary and it shows him holding a weak-year-old Naruto who was trying to take off his cage hat, much to Hiruzen's amusement. The second picture shows a 3-year-old Naruto sitting on his lap with a Hokage hat on his head. It was too big for him, so all it did was cover his forehead and eyes, but his smile can still be seen in the picture. The last picture is what causes Hiruzen heartache. It shows him and a 7 Naruto standing on the Hokage monument. Unlike the other pictures where Naruto has a huge grin. He has a small smile which could barely be called one. He hasn't been the same since that day. On October 10th, a mob of 200 civilians and 10 shinobi who all rank from Chunin to Jonin had taken the opportunity when he was in a council meeting to barge into Naruto's apartment that Hiruzen had provided for him and kill him. It wasn't the first time that Naruto was attacked by such a large mob. The Anbu guards he had assigned to protect Naruto were strangely nowhere in sight. When Hiruzen had gotten out of the meeting, he had checked up on Naruto by using the all-seeing orb he had in his office that he used to see the goings-on in the village from time to time when he himself could not leave the office. What he saw made his blood go cold as ice when he saw a 6-year-old get beaten and stabbed by full-grown adults in his own village. Without a second thought, he had called his private Anbu squad and went to the apartment, which only took him 2 minutes since it was close by. When he had arrived, he gaped at the sight of a literal massacre. Bodies littered all over the apartment complex and blood was painted all over the walls. They had run to Naruto's room and noticed how the closer they got, the more bodies started to pile up. They had made it to the open door before a civilian woman in her 30s had run out of the room with a screech of terror of her voice. She was quickly silenced when a strange strand of energy shot out of the room and pierced her back before dragging her back into the darkness of Naruto's room. Hiruzen didn't have to wait for long to enter the room himself because a bloody Naruto had walked out of the room without a care in the world and passed by him and the shocked Anbu like as if they weren't there. Hiruzen had seen the boy as he walked by and he saw the boy had a glazed look about him as if he were possessed by something, but he was afraid of losing any more of his shinobi, so he let him go so as to not endanger their lives like those Naruto had just killed. He hadn't been the same since then, but on the upside nobody had been bothering him since that day. But they still give him distasteful looks as he walked by when he did. Not even the members of the Shinobi or Civilian Council were annoying him, which itself was odd since they were usually the ones who did, but that was mostly because when they tried to get Naruto executed for the slaughter he caused, a civilian literally lost his head when he declared Naruto as a demon who should be killed off. As the rule he had placed shortly after Naruto's birth, nobody could ever mention his status as a Jinchuriki or ever call him a demon. The council realized that they weren't dealing with the old man who they could bully around in the past to get their way and were instead arguing with the god of shinobi instead. Hiruzen opened a drawer in his table and took out a file with the name Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze on the cover. He opened it and looks into the contents of it. In it are 3 pages, one of them being his birth certificate, which proved that he was the birth son of both Minato and Kushina. He had that for when Naruto's parents came back, so when he finds out, he can do as little damage as possible. The second sheet of paper is Naruto's shinobi registration papers, which were already signed for. He knows that he will pass with minimum effort, so he took the liberty to hurry the process up to save Iruka some time on preparing it. Hiruzen knows that Naruto could have entered the academy early like Itachi Uchiha had done, but the blonde said that he wanted to stay in the same class with his best out of the two friends he had. He was ecstatic to find out that Naruto made a couple of friends since everyone else made sure to keep their children away from him, and unfortunately there was nothing he could do about that. The third one is what Hiruzen wanted to take a look at. It's a file on everything about Naruto. What he likes, hates and his skills. He had Naruto fill it out a while ago, but even though he filled it out there was much that Naruto was unable to fill in since his skills were too numerous to count. Hiruzen lifted the parchment up to his face to stare at the sheet with a small smile on his face as he looks it over. It's the proof that shows the world that Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze is one thing and one thing only. A prodigy among prodigies. Naruto had been born as one, and not just a simple prodigy, but one that was the elite of them. Yet if it was up to the villagers alone, then he would have never been able to expand upon it. Naruto learned how to hide and survive multiple attempts on his life since he was 5, and he got fairly good at it since it was quite frequent that the attempts happened. And it was through one of those attempts on his life when he was 5 that set him on the path of becoming the powerhouse he became in the present. The mob had burst into his home, but at this point Naruto expected it since he laid out a few makeshift alarm systems around the apartment building, which was fairly easy since no one else wanted to live in the same place as the so-called demon brat, so he had the entire apartment to himself. Hell, he booby-trapped at least a dozen of the rooms so that those seeking him out would suffer for trying to hurt him. He never slept in the same room twice in a row, and so it was harder for them to find him since he had an escape plan for each one. So as expected, the mob finally found him, but he escaped out the window and chased to the forest of death on the outskirts of the village. They stopped chasing him when he entered through a gap in the fence since they thought that he would die in there, so they left him there to die with smiles on their faces. Naruto was no fool since he knew exactly where he was. And usually he would have avoided this place, but as he ran away from the crowd he had felt as something called to him. As he made his way deeper into the forest, he felt the call more clearly and soon he came upon an unnatural looking tree with a hole in it. He reached his hand into the hole and inside of it, he pulled out an eye-shaped medallion that was made of metal. As he held it in his hand, it shifted a bit like it was opening and flashed him in the eyes with a strange light. As he was flashed he was gifted visions of mages throughout various dimensions. Naruto felt a slight bit of the magical power that they had used themselves and with it was able to blast a lone wolf that had stalked him as he came into the woods. Naruto had smiled as he experimented with his newfound power a bit, but he came to the realization that he would need to find a means to strengthen this power somehow, but that was something for later, so at the moment he simply returned home. It was when he was attacked at the age of 6 that his power truly came to fruition. He had tried to use his magic to defend himself against his massive swarm of attackers, but it was not even close to enough to defeat them. He had been stabbed repeatedly before something took over his body and used magic to defend him from the mob. It had been ruthless and spared not a single one of them. It even killed the one who tried to flee. Once they were all dead, the entity that took over his body took him back to the forest of death. Once there it used magic to open a portal that brought him to a place that he would come to learn was called the Sanctum Sanctorum. Here he was finally released from the possession of his body and met the thing that had done so. It was a bald white woman in a yellow-orange robe. She explained that she was known as the Ancient One and had awaited the day that he would begin his training to become the most powerful of sorcerers in his world. She told him that she had trained another in the arts like he would train him and he became a legend of his realm as Naruto would in his own. It was then that his training began and as the prodigy that he was able to master what was taught to him quite easily since he had the proper teacher. Naruto had gone back to explain things to Hiruzen, who at first was surprised about all of this, but Naruto introduced him to the Ancient One. She showed him an example of what Naruto would be able to do in the future, but was warned that Hiruzen would not be able to enter the sanctum again after his initial visit. Hiruzen had simply asked if this was what Naruto wanted, and when he saw that Naruto truly did he left it at that and let it happen. The sanctum was a place that was outside of time and dimension itself, so while months went by within it, only days occurred in the real world. And there was the added bonus that he aged via his own realm's time, plus a place he could sleep without people trying to kill him. Over the years his abilities had grown to astronomical proportions, and Hiruzen looked at the paper in his head to see which ones he had labeled on it. Energy blasts. Blasts of elemental energy that he could conjure up and throw them at people with the added bonus of mixing various elements to make them far more powerful. Astral projection. Naruto could release his astral form from his body instantaneously and at will. In this form he did not need to breathe, eat, drink or sleep, was unrestricted by physical laws, was invisible, though could be seen by any if he wished it so, intangible, and incapable of being harmed by all but the most powerful and rigorous of mystic means, which no one in the elemental countries had. As physical laws are meaningless on the astral plane, Naruto was able to use it to traverse at virtually any speed desirable, which was incredibly useful as a shinobi. Banishment. Naruto can banish many types of creatures and humans to other dimensions, which also included summons as well, so it perfectly countered that plan of defense in its entirety and made summons worthless against him. Conjuring of objects. Transmutation. Naruto had the ability to change one thing to another. He used this to conjure up the insane amounts of money that people demanded of him for food and supplies, which he paid for but laughed afterwards since he put the spell on a timer, so in a few days the money would return to the junk paper it was in the first place, so he got the stuff he wanted for free. Telepathy. Telekinesis. Flight. Naruto could fly using magical energy, but also had an item known as the Cloak of Levitation that allowed him to do so without using his own magical power to do it. While he admitted that the cloak was fairly nice looking, it didn't really clash well with his shinobi world, so he used magic to transform the shape of it in a way that it still retained its power. So now it was a crimson sash he wore with the rest of his gear. Protective shields. Using his magic, he could shield himself or his allies. The shields were so powerful that point-blank explosions could not break them. Hypnotism. Illusions. Intangibility. Naruto had the ability of invisibility or near invisibility and phasing through solid material. Time manipulation. Naruto had shown that he was able to freeze, slow, and travel through time. The last one of the three though he didn't use since he was warned that there was major repercussions for doing so. So he decided to never use that unless he truly needed to. Elemental manipulation. Naruto could manipulate and control the elemental forces and bend them to his will. Teleportation. Dimensional travel. And to think he's only 13, thought Hiruzen in amusement. He was beyond impressed by Naruto's skill level, which should be at the level of a jonin if he was to think about it. Yet, he isn't even a genin yet. Hiruzen could imagine the amount of damage Naruto will be able to do once he gets more experience, since even though he had all these magical powers at his disposal, he lacked the proper experience to utilize them fully. It was giving the old man goosebumps at the mere thought of it. It's a shame that I have to give back the hat to Minato when he gets back, thought Hiruzen with a frown. He would have loved to give the Hokage title to Naruto when he came of age and strength, since his abilities were beyond anything that even he was capable of doing. But sadly, he had to give it back to Minato when he came back from Fire Capital as per his orders. He looked at the latest letter sent by Minato and Kushina, which gave him details about how strong the girls have gotten over the years, as well as information on how well they're doing, which he just couldn't give a damn about. What he did find amusing was the supposed skill the girls have earned during their years of training with Minato, Kushina, Jiraiya and Tsunade. From what he has been told, Natsumi and Narumi have really taken a lot more from their mother than they would have wanted. This included her quick temper, her less than rational mind, and to attack someone when they mention the word tomato when someone described them in any way. Hiruzen didn't like the mention of their arrogance, which for some god-forsaken reason Tsunade had found it wise to mention in the letters as well. What the girls haven't taken by either of their parents is the love of Fuinjutsu. Both their parents and Jiraiya have tried many times over the years to train their daughters in how to use it, but neither girl had the needed attention span to train in the almost forgotten art. Hiruzen laughed as he read this, since where they lacked in the art, Naruto excelled in a way that no Uzumaki had ever been able to accomplish, but then again, what was one to expect from a power such a magic? What they did learn was how to activate their chakra chains, which would help them to calm each other down if they went insane from using Kyuubi's chakra. Speaking of Kyuubi's chakra, neither girl had learned to control more than one tail of each of their own 9 tails worth of demon chakra. This made Hiruzen laugh even harder than before, since Minato had bet on the wrong child and it was clearly showing from the information presented to him. So many of Naruto's years spent and wasted, thought Hiruzen with a hateful glare at the letter. They went to the Fire Capital to keep Naruto away so they can give their daughters all their undivided attention so that they could train them on how to use the demon chakra, but what was the point of it all if they've only gotten control of a single tail's worth of it? Every letter they sent asked for info on Naruto and how he was doing in the village. Hiruzen was still pissed about their actions towards Naruto at birth, so in a form of payback, he made sure to give them as little info as possible so he can personally watch them squirm when they find out everything which has happened to the son they left behind. Other than training the girls on how to use the demon chakra they still have yet to fully master, they were taught various jutsus ranging from D to B rank, with their only known A rank jutsu being the Rasengan that their father had become infamous for making during the Third Shinobi War, and just like him, they were unable to fully complete it. Natsumi was taught on how to use the whirlpool style of fighting from their mother, while Narumi was taught the hummingbird style from Minato. They were also taught Kenjutsu by their mother, as was stated in the letter, they were intermediate level at best. They also couldn't learn Genjutsu due to the large amount of chakra they have, but they were taught how to break out of it. Jiraiya helped train them in the ninjutsu department, while Tsunade could only train them on how to use C-rank medical jutsu, since both girls don't have the necessary chakra control to use any higher healing jutsus. She was however able to teach them her legendary super strength, which made up for it in the end though. Hiruzen didn't like how Tsunade mentioned that when they returned to the village, she would help train Naruto in her medical practices when they returned to the village. Neither he nor Naruto's teacher were gonna allow her to do that when she had left her duties as Naruto's godmother. Plus from what Hiruzen saw of his abilities with magic, his medical knowledge far surpassed her best. Ahahahaha. Laughed Hiruzen, holding his gut to help ease the pain from laughing so hard. It was the same reaction he gave when he read it the first time, but it still made the man laugh, no matter how many times he read it. The reason for his laughing was because even with the help of 4 level ninja, the supposed princesses of Konoha only had the skills of a chunin. They may know some powerful jutsus like the Shadow Clone Jutsu, Rasengan and several B-rank jutsus, but they neither had the experience nor the patience to use them to their full effectiveness. Naruto on the other hand has spent most of his life with a teacher that taught him in the arts that no one had ever dealt with in the entirety of the elemental countries, which meant he was a force to be reckoned with since there was no form of counter to his abilities. But as he grew far more powerful in time, he became a target for a few people who saw him as a weapon to be controlled. The main person who thought this was Hiruzen's old rival by the name of Danzo. The man had been foolish in his goal to capture the boy, and the end results were the complete and utter destruction of not only the entirety of his hidden root forces, which were supposed to be disbanded in the first place, but the hidden base that was beneath Konoha itself. Naruto flooded the tunnels with molten rock to destroy everything and everyone in the tunnels. Danzo had played his trump card, which was an explosive seal, but Naruto simply banished him away to another dimension to explode. Yet Danzo wasn't the only person who was interested in Naruto, there was someone else who he had caught the eye of over time. This someone being none other than Orochimaru the Snake Sannin himself. Imagine his surprise when the only Sannin left in the village walked into his office and demanded him to allow Naruto to be his pupil. When asked why, Orochimaru explained to him how he saw Naruto train in one of the training grounds. Impressed with the amount of skill a 10-year-old has, especially without a teacher, or so he thought since only Hiruzen was aware of the Ancient One's existence, he explained how he wanted to unlock Naruto's full potential as a shinobi. Afterwards, Hiruzen gave Orochimaru his personal file on Naruto, and when read, Orochimaru wanted him more. Agreeing to it, Naruto was told the news of this, to which they thought he would take the opportunity. And at first Naruto was tempted, but in the end he declined the offer. When asked by a surprised Orochimaru on why he would pass up on such a thing, he told Orochimaru that he already had a teacher. Plus the fact that his sisters had been trained by the other Sannin, with Natsumi becoming the future Toad Sage and Narumi becoming the future Slug Sage, only solidified the point home even more. He wanted nothing to do with the family that abandoned him, not even by training. If he were to train with Orochimaru and became the new Snake Sannin, it would just be expected of him by his parents, and he would be damned if he ever became what they wanted him to become. So with that answer Orochimaru relented and went on to begin train Naruto's best friend Sasuke. The bottom of the letter was what infuriated Hiruzen the most out of the whole thing. It turned out that Minato wanted to place Naruto on the same Genin team with his sisters when they arrived next week for the Genin exams so they can bond over time. He also wanted to place Kushina as the Jonin sensei so she can get to know her son as well. It made Hiruzen see red to see the people who willingly abandoned their son try to now force themselves into his life like he had no choice on the matter. Not if I have anything to do with it, he thought with a smirk as an idea came to mind. He knew that placing Naruto on a team that consisted of nothing but his family who abandoned him will just hurt him more than finding out that they're alive and left him to the wolves. Naruto may be smart and calm for his age, but not even he will be able to control himself when put in that type of environment. As one last fuck you. To Minato, Hiruzen wrote something on an empty scroll before placing the Hokage seal on it to make it official. Plus it was the tradition that the final order of a retiring Hokage could not be changed, so Minato could not dispute it in any way when he took the position back from him. You're gonna have quite a nasty surprise when you get here, Minato, he thought with a chuckle. Sanctum Sanctorum. Standing in the middle of the training room was one Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. He had spiky blonde hair with bits of red highlights he got from his mother and father. Dazzling blue eyes scanned the field for any threats to himself as he had been taught by his master. He wore a tight red muscle t-shirt that made his abs he acquired in his training visible, and over that he had a jet black vest that had a hood to protect his head from the rain if needed. He wore slightly loose black pants that matched the color of his vest, and around them was the sash that he had turned the cloak of levitation into, as well as wore sandals, since he loved the breeze on his feet. Attached to his back was a katana imbued with magical runes of all sorts that he named Wasareta, which meant forgotten. His hands were also wrapped with what appeared to be some sort of red tape, but was in fact bands of sidorak that he had wrapped around them, since they were great at protecting his hands. Blue slits look around in rapid tempo to see where his opponent was. Naruto flips away when 100 magical spikes flood the area he had just stood on. He wasn't out of the woods yet because when he landed on the floor and got his footing back, Naruto could hear the floor sizzling, so after looking down, he sees at least a dozen explosive seals underneath his feet. A quick dash with his magic and he just barely saved himself from being blown to bits. "Almighty winds of Gaia," said the voice of his opponent. A powerful gust of wind heads towards Naruto, who grabs the hilt of his sword. Applying wind elemental magic to his sword, Naruto swung downwards and splits the gust of powerful wind in half, which blows at both sides of him. All of a sudden a forest sprouted from the ground instantly, and as it did a figure comes out of the woods and heads towards him with impressive speeds. Having very little time to react, Naruto swung his sword, which is stopped when the attacker blocks it with a kunai, which is also coated in wind magic as well. Ducking under a kick, Naruto tries to impale his opponent, but said opponent swerves their body away from all of his strikes before landing a straight kick to Naruto's midsection. Skidding to a stop, he charges and the next few minutes are spent with both fighters clashing in a battle of blades. Sparks fly everywhere as a wind-enhanced sword meets with a wind-enhanced kunai. Eventually, Naruto's opponent got the upper hand and forced Naruto to drop his sword so he wouldn't lose his hand. The attacker smirks before he widens his eyes when the bands of sidorak, which were connected to Naruto's forearm, wraps around his arm and tightens in almost bone-crushing pressure. Dishing out a kunai that he conjured up, Naruto impaled his opponent in the chest with the kunai, but frowns when they simply vanish. "A shadow construct," thought Naruto with a frown. Naruto's eyes widen when he sees a small dot of movement at the edge of his vision, and he ducks in time to dodge an overhead kick, which from the amount of wind blowing away, would have taken his head clean off. Slamming his hands to the floor, Naruto spins on them, outstretched his legs to kick away his opponent's defending arm, and kicked them across the jaw. He then jumped from his hands and spun sideways in the air and punched the attacker at the side of his face, which threw them away a few feet before they regained their bearings. The opponent flies through fighting stances in blurring speeds which are matched by Naruto for his own attack. Iron Fist of Rage. Waves of Tsunami. The wave of water spits out of Naruto's mouth which flies towards his opponent's incoming attack that burst into the form of what appeared to be a dragon of some kind. When both attacks impacted with each other, a large ball of steam surrounds the training room and blocks all vision of those within it. This doesn't stop Naruto or his opponent because sounds of fist hitting flesh can be heard from within the ball of steam. Naruto flies out of the ball of steam after the got hit across the face. Having enough of the distraction, he releases a wave of wind which blows away the steam and shows that his opponent isn't anywhere near. All of a sudden, the ground underneath him breaks to show his opponent raising from the ground and uppercutting him in the stomach, which causes the blonde reed to gasp out in pain and spit out spittle and blood. The attacker's smirk turns to one of surprise when Naruto pops away and a seal appears under the man, which summon forth mystical chains that bind him around his neck, arm and leg. A preset trap to hinder your opponent. Not bad, kid. Your fighting skills have increased fairly well over the years. Complimented the attacker with a clap of his hands as the chains faded away since the fight was over so they were no longer needed. Thank you, sensei, but I'm still not strong enough to take you on in a full fight without my magical abilities, replied Naruto with a small smirk which was returned by his secondary teacher known as the Iron Fist. The Ancient One had traveled back to the dimension she had recently been in and asked for his aid in teaching Naruto more physical forms of training since her teaching was limited to magical only. He had agreed and constantly sparred with Naruto over the years. Naruto always lost said spars, but Iron Fist was no joke when it came to fighting. And this one was more of a challenge than usual. Sign the Ancient One was aiding the Iron Fist via magic, such as the shadow construct she made, as well as the magical wind sent his way. In time, my student. In time, Iron Fist said with a wave of his hand. So, should I start getting serious now? Asked Naruto, a small spark appearing in his eyes. It quickly disappeared when Iron Fist shakes his head negatively at his question. As much fun as that is, I'd prefer if you didn't miss class. There may only be a week left before your genin exams, but that's no excuse for you to be skipping. Plus I need to get back to my dimension. It's nice to train someone and all, but I am still a hero in my world and need to protect it, said Iron Fist, waving him off. Very well, sensei. I'll see you later, he said with a bow before disappearing in a portal he conjured up to take him home. When Naruto leaves, Iron Fist rubs his aching jaw that Naruto had kicked him before and couldn't hold back the large grin. 1 week to go before his so-called parents come back. Can't wait for you to start making heads turn, Naruto. And with that he walked through a portal back to his dimension courtesy of the Ancient One. Konoha Academy. After taking a quick shower since he was very sweaty from training, Naruto head out to the academy, and while walking he ignored the glares and whispering around him. As he did he thought about his so-called family. Unknown to the Hokage, Naruto knew exactly who his parents were and why they left him alone in the village all those years ago. Naruto had found magic that was capable of projecting his memories that he himself could not even remember, such as when he was first born. It was very helpful whenever he got that feeling like he had forgotten something and looked back to see if he did. He remembered the moment when Minato gave him away to Hiruzen with a smile on his face, all the while thinking that he can just make up the lost 13 years of his life when he comes back with the rest of his group. Naruto had no plans to forgive or forget his family's actions which had caused him many years of pain and anguish because of their sheer stupidity. To have such trust in the villagers was truly foolish in his opinion. They just lost family members to the Kyuubi, and Minato had literally given the reason for their suffering to them on a fucking silver platter. He knew that they would be returning soon since while meditating he became aware of so many things that happened in the world. It was this ability that Hiruzen was truly impressed with since it had saved the lives of many of his shinobi in the field since Naruto had warned him of ambushes and surprise attacks. Now if only the people knew they might be friendlier towards him, but he decided against it since he was fairly certain that the villagers would spin it in some way to make Naruto look bad and demand his execution in the end. Naruto knew his family would return and would try to bond with him by placing him on a team with his sisters and mother while his father took back the mantle as Hokage. It made the most sense after all seeing as he doubted that Minato would make his daughters go through the academy. Minato may become his Hokage since he was a part of their forces, at least for the time being, but he'll never be his father, no matter how hard he tried to be it. Entering the academy and walking into his classroom, he ignored the blushing and giggling girls in the room and the glares of envy from the males. Over the years he had grown into a fine young-looking man, and even though the parents of many of these young girls had been told to stay away from him, they could not help their teenage hormones from making them think this way about him. Naruto didn't really care for their looks since he was only interested in one girl who unfortunately was not in his class, but he did visit her on the regular. Walking up to the back of the room and taking a place beside his only friend that was there, Naruto greeted him with a small smile on his face. Sasuke. Naruto. Both boys had been friends since they were 6 when they met each other at a lake and talked to each other. They bonded over the fact that both lacked friendship with Sasuke being too gloomy and Naruto being what he was, and Sasuke's gloomy attitude only increased when his older brother Itachi killed the entire Uchiha clan a year later, which left him in a state of depression. Getting sick of his friend's attitude since he was beginning to grow distant after that event happened, Naruto then told Sasuke his situation with his own family and why they had ditched him as a means to explain to Sasuke that he wasn't the only one feeling the pain of betrayal since there were others who did as well. At first, Sasuke was skeptical about the whole thing, but seeing his brother kill everyone in his clan has caused him to open his eyes wide to the way the world was and made him believe in the wisdom that Naruto had imparted upon him. Seeing as they were both betrayed by family in such a way, the both of them began to train with each other in hopes to get power and prove them all wrong. Although, they may train together when possible, yet Sasuke knew he stood no chance against Naruto no matter what he tries, even after said Imo got an apprenticeship with Orochimaru. It didn't mean that he didn't improve though, which he did since he had a good teacher. Many had thought that Orochimaru would have turned out differently since for quite a while he had been trying to obtain immortality and was prepared to do some inhumane experiments to try and obtain it, but what no one other than Orochimaru himself knew was that he was given a vision in his sleep at a younger age of what would happen if he went down that path and he did not like it in any form. So he declined Danzo's future offer of becoming a root shinobi and instead made himself famous within the village instead of infamous as he was in an alternate time. Naruto. Said Blonde smirked as he heard his name being called and looked over to the incoming lad who had called it out, knowing what's to come next. What wrong Shikamaru? Come for a rematch? Asked Naruto who had to control himself from chuckling at the look of almost borderline insanity on the Nara member's face. It amused him greatly to see the heir of the most laid-back clan freak out just because of him. It made him feel like he had accomplished something great since they were not ones to freak out lightly, at least unless there was an angry woman involved, then they easily freaked out. You know damn well I want a rematch. Shouted Shikamaru, slamming his shogi board onto the table. And this time I'll finally win. I'm not so sure of that. Sasuke, remind me again, what is the score between me and Shikamaru? Naruto asked Sasuke in fake ignorance much to the Uchiha's amusement. 27 to you and 0 to him, replied Sasuke with a small smirk adorning his lips. Not anymore Naruto. This time, I'll break your winning streak, declared Shikamaru, pointing his finger at Naruto's face. You can try. Who knows, you might get lucky. Said Naruto with a chuckle. Shikamaru frowned as he said that but sets the shogi table anyway with determination in his heart. It had been the same since Shikamaru first played Naruto in shogi. He was the first and only person other than his father to beat him in the game, and that infuriated Shikamaru, who silently prides himself in his intellect to no end. Setting the game pieces in place, Shikamaru eyed the table like his life depended on it. I've memorized all of his tactics, and I now know how to counter each one. This time, I win, thought Shikamaru, inwardly chuckling. Naruto pulled out a book on chemical reactions as Shikamaru made the first move. Would you put the book away and take this game seriously? Asked Shikamaru with a growl, since Naruto always did this when they played shogi. He would read a book and pay little attention to the game itself, and yet was still somehow able to win, even when Shikamaru put his all into the game. I'll take this seriously when you actually become a challenge, Shikamaru, said Naruto as he licked his finger and flipped the page in his book since he was finished with the current one. And you'll know when that is when I put my book down. Naruto then lifted his finger, and as he did, the magic he put into it moved his piece on the board that he wanted to. Naruto had mastered the art of multitasking over the years, so he was easily able to pay attention to both his book as well as the game in a way that it seemed like he wasn't caring about it. It pissed Shikamaru when he did this, and that amused him so. He still remembered how Shikamaru freaked out the first time he had used his telekinetic powers to move his chosen piece, but then again his family was capable of killing people with their shadows, which seemed impossible, so it wasn't so far-fetched once he thought about it clearly. 5 minutes later. And that's game, said Naruto, placing his final shogi piece on the board with a smirk. All Shikamaru could do was gape at the board while trying to figure out how he had lost. He thought that he had Naruto beaten finally, only for him to still lose in the end. Impossible. I've gone through all of your known moves, so how did you beat me? Demanded Shikamaru. Naruto and Sasuke look at the Nara with grins on their faces, enjoying how the blonde can easily make a lazy Nara feel unrest just with a simple game of shogi. It challenged their great ability of intellect, and by losing he figures out that he isn't the smartest person in the class. After all, Naruto was number 1 in everything in class, while Sasuke is following him in second place, with the exception of intellect, since Naras were infamous for theirs. Now that'd be telling. Looks like it's back to the drawing board for you, chuckled Naruto, waving the grumbling Nara off. You know he'll be back again tomorrow, said Sasuke with his own small chuckle. And you should know that I'll just win against him again, replied Naruto with a hint of arrogance. He knows that arrogance on the battlefield or in general is what killed many powerful shinobi in Kunoichi, but he felt that winning against a Nara in a game of shogi, he deserved some form of arrogance for it. He liked to be little greedy like that with such simple things. 4 days later, road to Konoha. Walking up a dirt path heading towards the Hidden Leaf village were 6 individuals, 2 males and 4 females. The men were Minato and his mentor, Jiraiya, while the females were Tsunade, Kushina and her daughters, Narumi and Itsumi. 13 years have passed since they left the village to train the girls on how to use Kyuubi's chakra, and now it was finally the day that they were scheduled to return. Do you think Naruto will like us? Asked Narumi in innocence, since she was generally curious about her brother. She had heard so little about him, but she was looking forward to the meeting. Jiraiya chuckled at the little girl who he thought of as his granddaughter and ruffled her hair much to her chagrin. Of course he will. Who in their right mind would hate such a cute face like yours? He asked while stretching out both of her cheeks. He stopped when Kushina hit him across the head with smoke flowing out of the injury in an animated comical fashion. Do that again, and I'll make sure you can't use your hands ever again, threatened Kushina with a sweet smile. Everyone laughed at how Jiraiya ran behind Tsunade in fear of the woman's wrath. The sight of the village's gates came into sight, and Itsumi started to cheer in excitement since the moment they had waited for was close at hand. Calm down, dear. No need to rush things, laughed Minato, who was also feeling excited to be back in the village and with his son. There was so much that he wanted to teach him to make up for lost time. 10 minutes later, with a calm pace, they arrived at the gate to the shell-shocked looks of the Chunin guards on duty at the time. Why, Yondaime? You're back, gasped out one Chunin in amazement at not just being in front of Minato, but also the red-hot habanero, 2 Sannin and from what he can guess, the princesses of Leaf as well. Yep, and it's great to be back. Mind if you hand over the clipboard? He asked, holding his hand out for said piece of wood. The Chunin nodded before handing over the clipboard to Minato, who signed his name in along with everyone else. When finished, they all walked into the village and headed towards their destination, the Hokage Tower. Hokage Tower. So they've returned, as they said, thought Hiruzen grimly after dismissing the Anbu who came to report the arrival of Minato and his family, along with his 2 students as well. A knock on the door took him out of his thoughts, and he can make a quick guess on who it was behind the door. Come in. The doors opened and, as he feared, Minato with his family as well as Jiraiya and Tsunade walk into the office. Hey Hiruzen. You've gotten more wrinkles since the last I saw you, joked Kushina, who stopped her fooling around when Hiruzen glares at her just like how he did 13 years ago. He still hadn't forgotten how they abandoned Naruto without a care and wanted to remind them all that he hadn't forgotten. "Aw, come on old man, don't be like that. 13 years and you're still holding a grudge," said Jiraiya, who wisely shut up when Hiruzen aimed his glare towards him. "Well, I'm sorry that you think that I'm being a stubborn old man, but it's kind of hard to forgive those who I thought as my own children and grandchildren to just abandon a child to his own vices." "We didn't abandon him," shouted Kushina angrily, having gotten sick of the guilt piling on her throughout the years. Hiruzen wasn't helping her problems. Narumi and Natsumi just stood there and watched the scene play out in uncertainty, not quite sure on how to feel about the situation. "Speaking of Naruto, where is he? I would have thought that you'd have him here by now," asked Tsunade, trying to stop Kushina from blowing up, and from the way her hair is swirling around in 9 different sections, she was on the verge of exploding. She couldn't blame her since she hasn't seen her son for the last 13 years. Personally, she wanted to see Naruto to judge if he would be good enough for her training as a medic nin, and maybe even her strength since Hiruzen didn't even send a picture of Naruto with his letters. "I sent an Anbu for him 5 minutes ago, so he should be here any moment." The Uzumaki Namikaze family smiled at the chance to finally meet their son brother after so many years apart. "However, I must warn you that he won't just accept you on the spot like you think, and that you will have to work for his love if he's even willing to give you a chance. 13 years is a lot of time wasted," stated Hiruzen with a small glare. "Stop worrying about that, will you? When he finds out that his parents are Minato and Kushina, then he'll be begging to go home with them," declared Jiraiya with a grin, believing that any child would love to find out that their parents are the famous Yellow Flash and the Red Hot Habanero. The family turned excitedly at Jiraiya's confident suggestion, but Hiruzen and Tsunade looked at the Toad Sannin like he just grew a new head out of the blue. "He can't be that stupid, can he?" they both thought to themselves as they heard this. Their attention turns towards the doors as they heard it open and saw Naruto walk in. As he walked forward towards the Hokage's desk, he was seen writing something into a small black book, and judging from the amount of concentration that he was paying attention to it, it seemed fairly important to him that he finished up what he was doing. Minato and Kushina turned back to see their son walk in and are both amazed at his appearance, but felt something off with him. The way his body tenses as well as how he walked in with his silent steps wasn't something an untrained 13-year-old should be doing when they walk into the Hokage's office. Jiraiya and Tsunade eye Naruto up and down and are both impressed with Naruto's appearance as well as the way he manages to scan the room when he walks in even when he was occupied with something else. Narumi and Natsumi on the other hand blushed at the sight of their brother, finding him quite handsome in their opinion. The way his shirt was filled with his toned muscles left little to the imagination. Naruto stopped walking a few feet from the Hokage's desk and stopped. He finished up whatever he was writing and placed the pencil he was using in the book before he shut it and placed it into what would appear to be an inner pocket on the inside of his vest, yet he simply sent it to his desk back in the sanctum. "Yes, old man? What did you call me for?" asked Naruto, ignoring the other occupants in the room. He knew exactly who they are, but he didn't need them to know that. Hiruzen nodded his head and points towards the chair in front of him. "Maybe you should take a seat for this," he said, but Naruto shook his head at the offer. "Very well, I'm not quite sure on how to say this, but I need you to have an open mind about this. So I'll just come out and say it now. These two," he said pointing towards a smiling Minato and Kushina. "You may find this hard to believe, but they are your parents. And these lovely ladies are your sisters," said Kushina, referring to both Riti's sisters. Narumi shyly smiled and waved while Natsumi grins with her own wave. Jiraiya smirked at this, all the while waiting for the happy family moment where the young lad would cry tears of joy when he sees his family. He did not expect any other type of response. Nobody did. "Ah, I see," deadpanned Naruto, not caring a single bit about this piece of information that was given to him. Hiruzen's sweat dropped as he heard Naruto's response, not really sure on how to react to such a lame response like that. He had expected for the blonde to either blow up in rage, demand for answers, or might even run to them in joy, but he highly doubted that the last one would happen if at all. "Did you not hear what I said, Naruto?" "Yes, I did hear you. You just said that the Yellow Flash and his wife are both my parents and that I have 2 sisters. Will that be all?" asked Naruto, who just wanted to leave and go do something else that was more of his choice than being ordered to. Minato, Kushina, Jiraiya and Tsunade were all stunned at the lack of response from the blonde-red hybrid, and Narumi frowned in confusion. Natsumi didn't like his response and made sure that everyone else knew about it. "What do you mean, will that be all?" shouted Natsumi in rage. She had expected for her brother to be ecstatic to find out he had a family, but the way he didn't seem to give a damn pissed her off immensely, with her inherited anger problem she got from her mother clearly showing. "It's exactly as I said it. If there isn't anything else to talk about then I'd like to go back to doing what I had planned for the day," said Naruto with a stoic face. "You just find out that your family is alive and you say will that be all. Don't you even care that they are here and alive? Asked Jiraiya, frowning at how his student son was behaving. He was acting like some sort of spoiled brat. If they are my real family, then why did they leave me alone here in this village? The adults flinched and the daughter's frowns deepened at his words. Both had been explained to about their situation and had accepted it without a word since they were just kids. If their parents thought it was a good idea, then who are they to argue with them? It's complicated, was Jiraiya's smart reply. It's complicated? That's your response for the 13 years I was left alone? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. And we're sorry about all of that, but we needed you here in the village so you can be safe. Your mother and I have many enemies outside the walls who wouldn't hesitate to hurt you to get to us, said Minato, hoping to reason with his son that he was trying to do the best for all of them. Then where were you? Minato inwardly winced at the accusing eyes Naruto was throwing at him. If I was in such danger as you claimed, then why weren't you here to protect me? If they are my sisters as you said, then why weren't they in danger along with me? Why did you make me think that I was just a no-good orphan with nothing going for me? Asked Naruto, secretly enjoying every twitch and wince his so-called family made every time he spoke. You didn't even leave me a guardian to take care of me. No note explaining the situation, nothing. Kushina tried to explain to her son on why they had to abandon him, but no words came out of her mouth. Instead, all that came out of her mouth was "it's complicated." Deadpanned Naruto, who was wondering how he has such idiotic parents, thinking that anything they said would be a good enough excuse for abandoning their child. If we're done here, then I'll take my leave. Gramps, I'll be in the sanctum if you need me. Turning around without another glance to his supposed family, he walked out of the room and closed the door behind him. Minato and Kushina stared at the door in shock, confusion and sadness, not enjoying their first reunion with their son after 13 years. From the way he just brushed them off, it seemed like he had no interest in getting to know them in any sense of the word. They would have thought that meeting his parents for the first time would have him overjoyed with the news, but it looked like that were very wrong. Jiraiya and Tsunade stared at the door, feeling a bit miffed at the lack of respect Naruto showed towards his parents. Yes, they left him on his own for the first 13 years of his life, but he doesn't understand the reason for it. In their opinion, he has no right to just push them off like that without knowing the circumstances for what they did, and both decided to make sure that he knows. Narumi and Natsumi look at the doors with mixed thoughts. They had believed that he would have jumped for joy when he found out that he had a family, but should have expected that wouldn't have happened. They didn't expect the lax reaction from him and decided to find out more about him to possibly get to know him better, maybe bond like brother and sisters should. Hiruzen just stared at the doors with a confused expression. He had expected a lot of reactions from Naruto, but that definitely was not what he had expected from him. It was like as if he already expected this to happen, which was ridiculous since he never told Naruto who his parents were to save him from the trauma of learning such a thing at a young age. Where is this sanctum that Naruto mentioned? Asked Minato as the shock of all that had just recently happened finally passed. It's a place we cannot get to, said Hiruzen with a frown, and even if we could, I would still not tell you where it is. Why? Demanded Kushina, who was enraged at this point since in her mind, Hiruzen had no right to withhold such information from them like this. We are his parents and have the right to know where our son is. Oh, Naruto is your son? Asked Hiruzen sarcastically. This is news to me since for the past 13 years he didn't have parents to raise him. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you? Do you have any idea what your son has gone through in your absence? All the pain that he went through thinking that no one wanted him. Where is he? Asked Minato, who wanted to know so they could go and apologize and begin the healing process so they could be a family once more. Like I said, started Hiruzen as he began to continue the paperwork he had started earlier but had stopped to handle this meeting. It's somewhere we can't get to. You want to find out where, then ask Naruto himself if you are able, but do not be surprised when he doesn't answer you. Not get out of my office since I have paperwork to go over still and it will take a few days to reinstate you as Hokage once again. And with that, the group left to try and search out where Naruto had gone and where exactly the sanctum was. Lightly lit room. Ikumo Kurama sat in a chair looking out her window, bored out of her mind. She usually painted to pass the time between training and meeting with her only friend, but she was not feeling that artistic right now, so she simply waited for her friend to arrive as he said he would. She possessed long brown hair and light brown eyes. Her hair was straight on one side, but on the other side it is in a braid. In addition, she sported a clip with 2 circular designs. For her outfit she wore a pink kimono held closed by a pink sash with 2 pockets on the front. She also wore violet baggy pants and red mesh armor underneath her kimono and legs, along with sandals that were orange in color. Her outfit being sealed while training with her friend was a series of kimono-like shirts that had long right sleeves and short left sleeves that were held close by a wide pink sash with red mesh armor underneath it, all with a light blue skirt and a brown headband. She had been born with a weak body, which made her unable to perform the physical activities required of a ninja. Worried about this development, her father had petitioned the third Hokage to grant Yakumo a special tutor to allow her to become a proper ninja in time. The tutor chosen was Kurenai Yuhi, who was a genjutsu user like Yakumo was. Inspired by the example of Rock Lee, who was unable to use ninjutsu or genjutsu, and his relationship with his sensei Might Guy, Yakumo believed she could become a ninja through simply concentrating upon her genjutsu skills, since she excelled at it. But the problem with that line of though was that Kurenai lacked Guy's optimism and felt that she was unable to train Yakumo in this regard. She eventually refused to train Yakumo, instructing her to seek another path in life. But Yakumo's refusal forced Kurenai to later seal up the young girl's powers in fear of her lashing out. This was done on the order of the third Hokage, as he had been made aware of the Ido, a sentient and malicious personality within Yakumo's mind, which had been generated from the bad part of her psyche. This personality could control her and use her incredible powers for destructive means, with the destruction of Konohagakure foremost in its mind. However, the monster overcame the seal and cast the illusion of a fire engulfing the Kurama clan's household, which killed Yakumo's parents. Yakumo, however, believed that the fire was started on the order of the third Hokage, having overheard a conversation that she believed indicated that the third Hokage was planning to kill her if she became too much of a threat. She nearly lost her mind at this point with a mindset to cause as much chaos and destruction as she could before she met her eventual end. It was at this point that Hiruzen asked Naruto for a favor and had him go and see if he would be able to help her. He said he would do it on one condition, which was to sign a paper he had without reading it. Hiruzen had at first declined since he needed to read whatever Naruto wanted him to agree to if he was to sign it, but Naruto simply countered with the fact that he was being asked to go against something he didn't know. Naruto went on to state that what he wanted signed was for a personal thing and not something that would harm anyone if signed, of that he gave his word. So in the end Hiruzen relented and signed off on the paper as well as stamped it with the Hokage's seal to make it official. Naruto had cast a protective barrier so that no one could either exit or enter the building once he himself entered. He entered the clan home, and once he did he was taken aback quite a bit since the inside of the house was like a whole new dimension on its own, since the space far exceeded the actual house side. He used his ability to fly to roam the area and had found her in her demonic Ido form, painting pictures of terrifying creatures that became real when she finished the paintings. She had eventually noticed that he was there and sent her creations to kill him. But she was surprised when Naruto easily burned her constructs away with his power. Her rage grew as she saw this, and it affected the illusionary world around them. It morphed to her will, and what she wanted was a means to bind him so that he couldn't defend herself. Yet no matter what she threw at him, it failed in its execution. Naruto in the end stopped her fighting by binding her with magical chains to stop her from fighting back. She had screamed out in rage as well as pain since she was sad, which Naruto picked up on. He recognized the signs and took the time to talk to her. That action alone was enough to calm her down, since people avoided her like a curse for the past few years, and it was good to communicate once again. In the end she told him that the demonic entity had fed off her negativity and her lack of companionship, as well as her tutor's refusal to teach her, as well as the shattering of her dreams of becoming a kunoichi, only made her sink farther into depression. She was alone, without friends of any sort, and her own family avoided her as well. It was then that Naruto did something that shocked her as well as healed her broken heart. He hugged her. That one simple action finally broke her free from her depression, since it was a loving hug. She returned it with as much love as she was receiving with tears in her eyes, since this was what she truly needed right now to begin the healing process. Naruto went on to state that he was in the same sort of position with a lack of family, but he at least had one friend to ease his burden. So he held out his hand towards her to get her back onto her feet and told her she had a friend in him, since everyone needed at least one. Naruto then went on to use magic to extract the demon within her and sealed it away in an amulet with a unique shape, the outsider's mark from Dishonored, he gave to her so that she could still use the powers she had when possessed by the Ido, but without the fear of possession. With the aid of magic he helped her body heal to its pristine condition so that she could continue on with her training. Naruto mentioned that he could talk to the Hokage and see if Kurenai could still train her, but she had gotten pissed when she was told this and declined. So in his spare time he helped her train her body as well as her illusionary abilities. And while he was no expert in training shinobi skills, he was a master at illusions and taught her much in the art. She was trained in secret, but Naruto informed Hiruzen on the matter since he needed to know and he understood why it was kept secret. And speaking of the devil, a portal appeared behind her and Naruto came through it. "Hello Yakumo," said Naruto as he waved to her as the portal closed behind him. "Naruto," she responded with a smile on her face, since she was truly happy whenever he was near since he was her only friend. But that wasn't the only reason, since in the time they spent together she felt love grow within her heart towards the person that had saved her from the darkness that threatened to consume her. Yet while he had built up her confidence over time so that she believed in herself to the point that she continued with her dream once more, she still lacked the confidence to admit her feelings towards him. Secretly she hoped that he would pick up on this and return her feelings towards him. "So how are you?" asked Naruto as he conjured up a chair to sit next to her. He conjured up a tea set as well and flicked a fire under it to get the water to boil. "I'm doing fairly well. I was just waiting for you to arrive to train some more." "Sorry for the delay," said Naruto as he poured the hot water into the teacups for himself and Yakumo. "I was on my way here to see you, but I was called to the Hokage's office and had to go there first." "Why were you summoned out of the blue?" asked Yakumo with a curious look on her face. "Was there another emergency that needed your magical expertise to solve it?" "No," said Naruto as he took a sip of tea before he continued, "my family returned today." "Are you serious?" asked Yakumo in shock. Naruto had told her all about his childhood in the years he had known her, and it was because of the shared pain of the loss of family that made their friendship stronger than before. "I am afraid not," said Naruto with a sigh. "So what happens next?" asked Yakumo. "Now," said Naruto as he stood up and cracked his fingers, "we continue with your training." "Okay," said Yakumo with a bit of sadness since she was still mad at herself for not gaining the courage to admit her feelings, but there was still time since he was not usually around other women, since they pretty much hated him for containing the soul of Kyuubi. She had heard about it from the citizens of the village, since they openly talked about it when they could, since they didn't fear any form of repercussion. So with that all being said, Yakumo summoned up her illusionary world that she had mastered over the years and prepared for the sparring match that she was about to have. The past week had been a slightly eventful one for Naruto and his group. Each of the three of them did their own thing as they waited for the final day of the academy. Naruto trained in the sanctum, mainly to avoid his family as well as his so-called godparents, since they were searching high and low for him, yet came up empty on any sort of information as to where he was or where or even what the sanctum was, since no one other than Naruto and three others had ever heard about it. Naruto and Sasuke had their final test to do at the academy within the week, yet they both aced it easily. Sasuke had been trained for years by Orochimaru, so it was so easy for him while Naruto had magic. Sure, there was one teacher there by the name Mizuki who tried to sabotage his techniques with a jutsu of his own that he discreetly used in the hopes that Naruto would fail, but it ultimately failed due to the main fact that Naruto's power stemmed from magic, not chakra. So in the end both passed with no problems. It humored Naruto and Sasuke as well, but to a lesser extent, to know that his family had waited outside while he took his final exam. His sisters were not going to take it since Minato had already signed the paperwork to waive it for them since they were already beyond genin level, so the test was pointless for them. So they all waited patiently for him to exit the building so that they could congratulate him and try to begin the healing process and patching things up as a family. Naruto was aware that they were there and simply made a portal for him as well as Sasuke to leave the academy through. If only Minato and his group had known that the entire time they had stood outside to wait for Naruto, he and Sasuke were bonding like brothers over a simple meal of ramen that they ordered from the one place that sold food that neither kicked him out for being what they deemed as a demon or overpricing his food to at least 4 times its actual price so as to outprice him. The people who ran the stand were not his friends in any way, it was that they didn't hate him like most of the village did since they were more open-minded and didn't think he was a demon. And speaking of the demon sealed within him, or at least the soul of it was, Naruto knew of the entity sealed within him ever since he was 6. One of the first lessons taught to was meditation since to master magic, one had to be in full control of their emotions. When he did as he was instructed, he entered what appeared to be a dark hallway of sorts. Within it were so many doors, yet most of the doors were unlabeled and empty when he looked within them. Some of them had labels that he immediately recognized as various memories he had of the past and began to understand the fact that he was within his own mindscape. As he walked down the hall for a bit more, he realized that his mind was a bit too depressing for his tastes, so he concentrated hard and changed the layout into one that was better for him. Instead of a hallway, his mind was now a vast library with so many empty shelves that over the years would become filled with memories that would be seen as books. It was as he changed his mindscape that he became aware of the Kyuubi inside of his mind. While at first he was scared, but then again what 6-year-old child would not be terrified of a gigantic demonic fox, the Kyuubi quelled his fears by showing him that even though he appeared to be immensely powerful, he had no real power here. He proved this by taking his massive paw and slamming it down on Naruto, but Naruto simply phased through it since he was only a ghost-like entity, seeing that he was only the soul and had not a speck of his power left. For years the two of them got along, with Naruto granting him a speck of power to do something in his mind, which was to become basically a librarian. The Kyuubi was honestly grateful for being able to do something since he was so bored otherwise. They had become friendly, and as the years went by Naruto had begun on a project to help him out in the future, but it was still going to take some time for him to finish it. After he finished eating his meal with Sasuke, they paid for the ramen they had eaten and left to go their separate ways. As Naruto made his way towards Ikumo's place to visit her, he noticed that she was hopping from rooftop to rooftop with a large scroll on her back heading towards the Forest of Death. Naruto looked at this with a raised eyebrow since this was highly irregular and he knew there was more to this than what he was seeing. So using invisibility along with his ability of flight, he followed her to see where she was going and how this was all going to play out for her. She went deep into the forest and waited at the base of a massive, fairly evil-looking tree. Naruto settled on a branch and waited to see who exactly she was here to meet. He didn't really have to wait for long since 5 minutes later Mizuki appeared. "I have done as you asked," said Yakumo with a smile on her face, "so does this mean that I passed the test?" Test thought Naruto since this wasn't part of any test he was aware of and he was familiar with most of them that occurred in this village. "Yes you did," said Mizuki with a fake smile on his face as he slowly and discreetly grabbed a hold of his wind shuriken on his back, "Now hand over the forbidden scroll to pass the test." Ikumo was happy that she had been given this chance to participate in the test given to her. She had received a scroll written by the Hokage via Mizuki to steal the forbidden scroll as a test to show she was ready for active duty as a kunoichi, even though she herself never attended a single class. She accepted the test in hopes that when her status as a kunoichi was finalized, that she would be able to join Naruto's squad when they were formed. She had gotten the scroll easily enough since with her illusionary skills being unmatched by all other than Naruto himself, she was able to sneak in and back out without any complications. Yet as soon as she handed over the forbidden scroll, her instincts kicked in and she immediately jumped backwards in time to dodge the kunai that Mizuki tried to kill her with. "Filthy demon lover," growled Mizuki as he was pissed that she had dodged his attack. Yakumo fell over in shock since this was unexpected. "Why are you attacking me?" she asked in fear. "I completed the test." "This was no test you stupid bitch," said Mizuki simply as he unsheathed his wind shuriken in preparation of its use. "I simply wanted the scroll for myself and used you to get it so that I could dispose of you as well. You are a filthy demon lover and no one will miss you when I kill you, so you make an excellent pawn. Now die and become forgotten." Mizuki then threw his weapon at her, but it never made it to its intended target since halfway towards her, the weapon became awash with light and stuck in midair. And with a loud click it disappeared from existence to the surprise of Mizuki. Yakumo not so much since she had seen Naruto do things like this multiple times. "You say that she wouldn't be missed," said Naruto as he jumped from the branch he was on and stood in a protective manner in front of Yakumo. "But that is where you are wrong. Dead wrong." "So the demon himself appears before me," said Mizuki arrogantly as he whipped out his sword and got into an offensive stance. "I must have done something fairly good in my past for the gods to gift me the chance to kill you as well as your lover. If you truly believe that I am the demon that you fear," said Naruto as he snapped his fingers. When he did there was a loud echo that sounded throughout the woods. Mizuki heard something behind him and turned his head to see exactly what it was. What he saw made his eyes widen in sheer horror as he saw the Kyuubi, albeit far smaller, so that he wasn't taller than the trees in the area, standing right there in all its demonic glory. Mizuki began to slowly back away in fear since he was sure he had no chance at defeating the demon himself. So many died the last time it showed up and it still lived, so what chance did he himself have alone to take on such a demon? Yet he only managed to take a few steps backwards before Naruto stabbed him through the chest only a few inches from the heart with his blade. "Then allow me to correct your final words. I am not the demon you all feared I was, I am in fact far worse." Naruto then twisted the blade, making the wound lethal, and quickly pulled out the blade before he used it to decapitate Mizuki in one fluid motion. Naruto conjured up water in his hand and wiped the blood off the blade. And with a quick flick of his wrist, the body disintegrated from existence and became forgotten like his blade was named. "Are you okay?" asked Naruto as he helped Yakumo back to her feet. "Yes," she said with a blush on her face as she brushed the dirt off her clothes, "but where were you this whole time? Also how is the Kyuubi here? I saw you hopping along the rooftops with the scroll and followed since the situation all seemed fairly odd. Plus I was on my way to visit you anyway, so I just followed you in secret to see how this all played out. And to answer your second question, you know I have his soul sealed in me. So while it may seem like he is here it is really an illusion since he can project himself like this, but he can't really do any real damage since he is a spirit with no power." "I was so scared," said Yakumo as she looked down in shame. She was ashamed of herself for falling for such a trick that was meant to end with her death. "Thank you for saving me." "Well I was happy to help a friend," said Naruto with a smile that made Yakumo more at peace as she saw it. "Plus remember this moment as a life lesson to not be so trusting of people. Always think before you act and double check if things seem a bit fishy in the long run." But I am glad to know that your instincts are on point since it was them alone that saved you in your time of need. But it seems like I am not ready to be a kunoichi. I wouldn't say that since you survived an attack from a Chunin instructor. He didn't expect you to dodge his attack, but you did, so I would say that you are ready but need to train still as well. Ikumo stepped forward and hugged him, which he returned in full before he picked up the forbidden scroll and set out towards the Hokage Tower. There they met Hiruzen, who was understanding of the situation in the end. They explained what happened in full and handed the scroll over to be placed back where it was to begin with. But this time it was placed inside with a far stronger seal that Naruto gave him to keep it secure. Once all was cleared up, Naruto took Yakumo home and made sure she was okay before he left since she was tired and went to sleep. As he walked about he shopped for a few things that he would need, such as food. And as he did, he felt as his former sisters were following him in hopes to find out more about him, as well as maybe finding out where the sanctum he mentioned was so as to relay the information back to their parents. What they saw only made them sad as well as angry, since they saw all the hatred that was sent his way from the villagers. They saw Naruto thrown out of 3 different eating establishments with one of the managers yelling out that if he returned that he would chop him into bits and feed him to his dogs. They saw as the store owners overpriced his purchases so that he paid far more than normal. They saw what his brother had to suffer while they were living a far better life elsewhere. Eventually they had seen enough and wanted to speak to him and apologize for not being there for him when he needed them the most, but Naruto had quickly turned into an alley. When they turned into it as well so as to continue tailing him, but were shocked to see that he had simply vanished. It was a dead-end alley, so there was no other way out other than the path they were now blocking, but he had still disappeared all the same. Nothing more really happened until the day that the squads were to be formed. On that day Naruto smiled as he got into his usual garb, which he used magic to clean daily, and ate a quick breakfast before he opened a portal back to the real world. While the majority of the sanctum was on a fairly reduced time span, his room had been altered to sync up with the real world so that he could sleep in real time. Once prepared for the day he made his way to the academy for the final time. As he made his way there, he sensed that his sisters were waiting for him at the front, so he simply went invisible and walked right past them as they stood there waiting for their brother. Once inside he made himself visible again and continued towards his classroom without missing a step. Once inside, he was met with the same looks he always got from his fellow classmates when he arrived, with hearts in the eyes from the girls with the boys, with the exception of at least 2, glaring at him for the looks that they wished that the girls would give them instead. Yet in the end it didn't matter to him how they felt since he walked past all of them towards the back of the room. He sat down and pulled his black book out so as to continue with what he was doing with it in the first place. Soon enough he was joined by Sasuke, who sat down next to him and waited like he did for the squad assignment. The situation escalated quite a bit later though, since Natsumi as well as Narumi both entered the room. They saw Naruto in the back of the room and quickly made their way towards him in hopes to sit next to him. The girls in the room looked at this with smirks on their faces as they saw this and simply waited. The 2 of them got 2 rows away from Naruto before they slammed into an invisible barrier. "What the hell was that?" said Narumi as she rubbed her head in pain. This was not something that she was expecting in any way, but it was then that she realized that there was no one in the last 2 rows near Naruto or Sasuke, and she had a feeling she knew why that was. "You 2 are not going to be able to get near Naruto," said Ino as she laughed with the rest of the girls in the room. Ino had once tried to use her family's signature to get into Naruto's head and implant subliminal messages of feelings towards her. Yet she had failed big time in the end, since he apparently had telepathic abilities as well that she was unaware of, and not only blasted her out of his own head, but made her body stiffen like a board and left it like that. She remembered that when she was taken by a medic to try to loosen her up, he simply told her to stay out of his head with his telepathic powers, and to this day she had never tried to again. "Naruto always erects an invisible barrier around him and Sasuke to keep us away like it did you," said Hinata. She had liked Naruto ever since he had utterly humiliated Kiba in a fight few years back. Kiba had enough of all the girls gawking over him since he believed that he should get all the chicks being the alpha male that he was. So he challenged Naruto to a one-on-one fight in front of the entire academy since he wanted Naruto's reputation to be in shatters when he lost. Naruto honestly didn't really care about all of this and half-assedly fought Kiba. Naruto simply dodged all his attacks while he continued to write in his black book and only took it more seriously when Kiba insulted him for being an orphan. He had boldly stated that Naruto was worthless to the point that no one wanted him and that his parents were probably still alive and abandoned him since he was so pathetic that he was a waste of space and wanted nothing to do with him. Naruto had slammed his book shut as Kiba had said that cruel sentence with a smirk on his face since he thought that Naruto would get angry and mess up. The action of Naruto doing so had actually terrified Kiba when he did it, since it was a well-known fact in the class that Naruto never put his all into anything ever. He was always multitasking and putting in a small portion of effort to finish things and was still somehow able to do what was asked without any trouble, no matter how hard the teachers tried to mess with him. To see Naruto face Kiba without distractions of any sort and instead paying full attention to him was quite unsettling to those who came to watch. While many pondered on what exactly he would do now that he was pissed enough to take this fight more seriously than before, Naruto had simply raised his hand up and conjured up a magical symbol within his palm that was green before he blasted his power at Kiba. The energy, which was wind in element, sliced off all of Kiba's clothes, leaving him butt naked for all who were there to see how this fight played out. His embarrassment hit astronomical proportions as everyone laughed at him, and even harder too, since they saw that he had such a small that only brought more shame to him. Since that day Kiba had kept to himself and never boasted about being an alpha again, and as a result, he stopped trying to hit on Hinata as well, which was a welcome change for her, since he was always trying to ask her out with the intention of getting into her pants. "Naruto," said Natsumi with a bit of an angry puffed out face. "This isn't funny, brother. Come on and get rid of the barrier so that we can talk face to face like a family proper." Those who were within the classroom looked at them in confusion, since they have known Naruto for years and knew he was an orphan. So to hear someone claim to be his family was fairly confusing to hear, since it contradicted all they knew about him. "I don't really know what you are talking about," said Naruto as he continued to write in his book, not paying much attention to them as he did so. "I am an orphan, so I have no idea why you claim that I am your brother." "We are your sisters, Naruto," yelled Narumi, since this was getting to be too much. Every chance that they had tried to take to patch up their relationship had failed, and seeing him sitting right there in a situation that he couldn't avoid them, only to have a barrier that kept them away, just pissed them off immensely. "Shouting that over and over again does not make it any truer than you wish to believe," said Naruto, who still continued to write in his book, since they were not really high up on his list of priorities. "Is there a way past this barrier?" asked Natsumi to her sister. They felt along what appeared to be an invisible wall and yet could not find any way around it at all. They looked for seals of some sort, since in their minds, it had to be seals to be able to erect something like this. "We have looked for years yet none of us have been able to break through it," said Sakura with a bit of a huff. She was different than the others since her focus was on Sasuke and not Naruto like the rest of them. "Naruto!" shouted Shikamaru, who had just arrived in the class. He had his usual shogi board in hand with the look of a man who wanted to win at all costs in his eyes. It made Naruto smirk knowing that he could make a usually lazy Nara put his all into doing something that his family deemed as relaxing. "Right on time, Shikamaru," said Naruto as Shikamaru made his way towards him. Narumi and Natsumi expected him to slam against a barrier like they had, but he was able to walk right up to him without any sort of resistance. "One more game before we part ways, Naruto," said Shikamaru as he set up the board, "and I swear to Kami I will win once in my life against you." "You do know that you can still challenge me even though we are no longer in the academy," said Naruto with a raised eyebrow as he still continued to write, but he suddenly stopped and slammed his book shut before he put it in his pocket to send it back to his desk. "But since you are taking this particular match serious, I will return the favor and do the same. So for this game I will pay full attention." The silence in the room as he said that was quite serious, since they never thought that they would hear him say those words, and to Shikamaru of all people no doubt. "Why the sudden silence?" asked Natsumi, who was genuinely confused to see this. "Naruto never takes anything fully serious," said Ino as she looked on in shock along with the rest of them. "So shall we begin?" asked Naruto with a smirk on his face. They played the game for a minute alone, no more, no less. The game lasted 7 moves and ended in another victory for Naruto. Shikamaru could only look at the board with wide eyes and a gaping mouth since he had been beaten in the fastest way possible. "And that is what happens when I pay full attention to what I am doing. I blow the minds of my opponent." Shikamaru simply picked up his shogi board, all the while crying in tears since he lost so badly. Naruto then folded his arms as he waited patiently for the teacher to come in and announce the squads. He smiled to himself as he remembered the scroll that had been left for him to read via means that he had only given to Hiruzen to deliver messages to him while in the sanctum. They all waited for 20 minutes, with even Narumi and Natsumi taking a seat all the while grumbling to themselves since their plan to talk to Naruto was shattered. After 20 minutes Iruka came into the room and explained that he was proud of all of them for their academic achievements. He then went on to announce the squads. "Gonna skip the ones that are canon, since by this point everyone should know them. Squad 7 will be Sasuke, Yakumo, and Sakura," said Iruka as those in class looked at him in confusion since they didn't know who Yakumo was. But they all had to hold their ears as they were forced to hear Sakura scream out in happiness that she was in a squad with her beloved Sasuke like she wanted to be. But before Iruka could say anything else, he was interrupted as a messenger showed up and handed him a note before he left. "Excuse me, but there has been a change in the squad assignment. Squad 7 is now Sasuke, Yakumo, and Naruto. your sensei is Kakashi Haddock. Once again the class was subject to Sakura's scream, but this time was in fury, which was only amplified by Narumi as well as Natsumi joining in on her rage. When they had left for the academy for squad assignments, they had been told that Naruto would be on a squad along with them with their mother being their sensei, but now they had just heard differently and they were fairly pissed off about it. Naruto at this point was tired of the screams of rage and snapped his fingers. When he did that, a magical circle appeared under Sakura and she was frozen in place with her mouth open in rage. "Oh thank merciful Kami," said Sasuke as the color returned to his face as he had dodged such a large bullet there. He knew all about Sakura's obsession towards him and it had caused him to lose all the color in his body to hear that they were on a squad together. He was unsure as to how she became a kunoichi in the first place since she was an extreme fangirl and was not what one would call strong in any sort of way. Iruka continued on with the squads since there were no more interruptions and then when he got to squad 11 he got one. Squad 11 will now be Narumi, Natsumi, and Sakura. Your sensei will be Kushina Uzumaki. Now that all the squads have been announced, please wait for your senseis to arrive for further instructions. Iruka then bowed to them politely and then left the room. Shortly after he had left, the various senseis came into the room and collected their squads. After 5 minutes all that was left was squad 7 as well as 11. They sat there in peace, or at least they did before the time lock spell wore off and Sakura was able to move once more. She would have continued to scream in rage, but one look from Naruto and she shut her mouth in fear at being frozen in place once more. Soon enough Kushina came herself to collect her squad. "Okay squad 11, time to go," said Kushina with a motherly smile on her face as she saw her children sitting there. "Come on." As she said that, Natsumi, Narumi and Sakura got up to go with their sensei, but Kushina stopped them since she was confused. "Hold on a second there," she said with a raised palm to symbolize for them to stop. "Naruto, why are you not coming with the rest of your squad?" "I am with my squad," said Naruto as he once more pulled out his black book to write within it. "I am on squad 7 with Sasuke here. I talked to the Hokage just recently and was told that you were on my squad. And yet a note came in just recently as well that said otherwise. If you don't believe me then ask your daughters since they were pissed to hear that I was on squad 7 instead of their own." "I'm gonna have a talk with the Hokage," said Kushina before she motioned for her squad to come with her. "Sweet Kami," said Sasuke as he began to chuckle as they were left in the room alone, "I thought that they would never leave." "You and me both," said Naruto as he slowed down his writing to pay a bit more attention to speaking with Sasuke. "So do you know who this Yakumo is because I have never heard that name before?" asked Sasuke as he leaned back in his chair as he relaxed a bit. "I do in fact know her," said Naruto with a bit of a smile on his face, "she is a friend of mine that I helped out when she truly needed it the most. I assure you that you will like her as I do, but then again anyone is better than Sakura, am I right?" "You can say that again," said Sasuke with a shiver going down his spine as he heard that. "But where is she?" "What makes you think that I know where she is right now?" asked Naruto as he looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "Because it seems that you know just about everything." "Well I am flattered that you think that," said Naruto with a chuckle, "but even though I have magical abilities, I am not omnipotent in any sense of the word. Magic can't do or know everything my friend. There are limits to even my abilities, which while massive still have limitations. Good to know for the future. But I have been meaning to ask you what you have been writing in that book for so long. I see you writing in that book religiously and yet I have no idea as to why. It's a side project of mine that I have been working on. It's not dangerous to anyone if that is what you are concerned about, since I am taking the utmost care to ensure that it does not quite literally blow up in my face. So how close are you to being done with it?" "I am almost done with the writing itself, there is just a few things other than that must be done once I have completed it. But then again a magical item takes quite some time to make." "That book is a magical item." "Of course it is. What did you think I was doing? Writing my autobiography because I can sum my life up in 2 words. It sucked." Before they could say anything more on the subject, Kakashi came into the room. He had such a bored look on his face as he read his book when he walked into the room. "From my first impression of this group, I am fairly unimpressed with you." "The same can be said about you," said Naruto as he slammed his book shut and put it away for later. "Because what kind of sensei is an hour late to pick up their group? I got lost on the road to life." "Well if you continue with this type of tardiness, then I will see to it that you not only never get lost on the road of life again, but you will in fact instead begin the long walk towards the afterlife." "Are you threatening me?" asked Kakashi with a bit of surprise on his face since this was unexpected. In all his years as a sensei, never had there been a student with the balls to say something like this to his face, and to be honest, he had to admit that he was fairly impressed. "No," said Naruto with a smile that was not genuine in any sort of way, but far more sinister in nature. "Threats are common and anyone can throw them out at people. I make promises, and Sasuke here is my witness. I am one to keep my promises. Okay, said Kakashi with a bit of a sweat drop on his head since this conversation was going south fast. Well, time for our first squad meeting. Meet me on the roof of the Hokage Tower. Kakashi then vanished in a swirl of leaves. So any idea as to where to find our third party member? Asked Sasuke. And as if on cue the door opened up once more and a panting Yakumo came into the room, huddled over a bit since she was out of breath from running. While she had been training in various things to get stronger in time, stamina was where she was weakest and she knew that she needed to work on that if this was any sort of clear indication of that fact. Well, right there, said Naruto as he stood up and walked towards the door. Am I too late? Panted Yakumo as she took a deep breath to try and calm herself. As a matter of fact, you are right on time, said Naruto as he pats her on the shoulder as he walked by her. Sasuke, meet Yakumo. Yakumo, meet Sasuke. Now that our squad knows each other, we have to go meet our sensei on top of the Hokage Tower. Please tell me that you are joking, said Yakumo. I am afraid not, said Naruto with a smirk on his face as he walked out of the room, but think of this as exercise that you need to keep your stamina up. Hello Yakumo, said Sasuke as he walked by as well, it's nice to meet you. Well, shall we go and meet with our Cyclops of a sensei? Damn it, said Yakumo as she followed her squad mates to their destination, all the while grumbling as she did. 20 minutes later. They finally arrived at the assigned spot on top of the Hokage Tower. There they were once again forced to wait on Kakashi, who was once again late for their meeting. As they waited for him, Naruto conjured up chairs for the three of them to sit on as they waited. And 10 minutes later he finally arrived. Well, hello there, said Kakashi with an eye smile as he saw them sitting there, and before he continued he noticed that Naruto was eating a muffin that he didn't have a second ago. And where exactly did you get that muffin? Muffin button, said Naruto as he took a bite out of it. What the hell is a muffin button? Said Kakashi before Naruto pulled out a big red button with the word muffin on it and tossed it to him. Kakashi was curious about it and pressed it since he honestly could go for a muffin right now, but as he pressed it, he was jolted with electricity that surged through his body. Naruto and his friends laughed hard as he twitched from the electricity. The fact that you fell for that so easily is quite humorous to me, said Naruto as his laughter started to die down. He had always had a bit of a need to prank people from time to time, and this was one of said times, since it was payback for being late twice in the same hour alone. But now let us get to this meeting you wanted to have with us. Yes, said Kakashi with a cough as he coughed out black smoke from his lungs. He looked at Naruto with a look of slight fear, since this kid was not one to shy away from pranking him in such a fashion. So let's start off by getting to know each other better. So why don't each of you introduce yourselves one at a time? Introduce ourselves, asked Yakumo with a quizzical gaze. Well, what are we supposed to say? Things you like, said Kakashi with a shrug of his shoulders. Things you hate. Dreams for the future. Hobbies. Things like that. Wouldn't it be better to lead by example, said Naruto as he whipped out his black book and began to write in it once more. He was so very close to finishing it and he needed to do a few more things after the writing portion was done with to make it complete. Me, said Kakashi as he pointed to himself, I'm Kakashi Haddock. Things I like. Things I hate. I don't feel like telling you that. My dreams for the future. I never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies. Well, that was useless, said Yakumo with a bit of an angry twitch on her forehead. Teachers were supposed to lead by example, and yet she just had to get stuck with what she assumed was the laziest of all of them if his example was anything to go on. The only saving grace to this squad was the fact that she got her wish and was put on the same squad as Naruto, and in her mind it made the good far outweigh the bad on the scales. Okay, said Kakashi as he pointed at Naruto, your turn to share with the group. My name is simply Naruto, said Naruto as he never once stopped his writing for a second to do as was asked of him. I have no last name for I am an orphan. The things I like are those who stay by your side through the worst of things, as well as my closest of friends, as of which at this moment I only have two. And as luck would have it they are on my squad as well. The things I hate are the polar opposite of my likes, with those I hate being the people who willingly abandon those who need them the most. There is more to my list of hates, but they are fairly minor in comparison to that single answer. My dreams of the future are something that I cannot explain to those uninformed of the matter, and I don't know you enough to even attempt at explaining it. But what I can say is that my dreams do also include having a family of my own one day to make up for the lack of one I have, and to be there for them always no matter the cost. And like with my previous answer with my dreams, my hobbies would need explaining, and I don't really care to. Well, that is quite a bit of information to process, said Kakashi with his hand under his chin as he thought about it. Kakashi had met with his old sensei Minato while his squad waited for him on the roof of the building and was ordered by both Minato as well as Kushina to try and find out as much as he could about Naruto so that they would be better prepared for the talk they wanted to have with him once this meeting of the squad was over with. Yet from the information he had heard, which he knew that Minato and his family were listening to as they spoke, the boy who was their son had no intent to open up to their attempts at fixing their broken relationship. In his mind, this did not bode well for the future. So next is your turn, girl. My name is Yakumo Kurama, started Yakumo as she smiled internally as she heard that Naruto was interested in starting a family at some point in the future. My likes revolve mostly around painting since I have perfected my art in the years I was in isolation from the world. I also like my friends, or if I am being honest, my friend, since there is only one. My dislike is those that stomp on the dreams of the younger generation and don't even apologize for it. Why does her dislike sound so familiar, thought Kakashi as he heard this. He thought hard about it and then it clicked like a light bulb turning on in his head. He remembered Kurenai speaking about an old student that she had tried to train, but she had been too weak to fully become a kunoichi. My dreams, Yakumo continued, are a couple of things such as a family of my own, as well as to become stronger to prove those who deemed me weak wrong. I want a family, since even though I am from a clan in name they themselves have all but abandoned me, so that it is like I too am an orphan as well. My hobbies are few in number, but I really don't want to speak them. That is good to know, said Kakashi as he pointed at Sasuke. Your turn, Uchiha. My name is Sasuke Uchiha, said Sasuke as he sat there with his head in both of his hands and thought. I hate a lot of things and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream because I will make it a reality. I am going to restore my clan and destroy a certain someone. For years that someone was none other than my older brother Itachi, but events have showed me that my hatred for my sibling was misplaced, since while he was the one to help in the killing of my clan, there was more to it than I was led to believe, as I witnessed it with my own eyes. For years my hatred for the man had driven me forward to become stronger to avenge my clan. And while the target may have changed, my goal in life has not. I will hunt the one who killed the innocent in my clan and make them pay for what they have done. Naruto smirked as he heard Sasuke say this. The man was too much of an emo at times. Well, he may have stated that he didn't really like anything, he knew that they were friends in the end. Years ago when Danzo had tried to capture Naruto in an attempt to try and turn him into a weapon, Naruto had decimated Danzo and his forces since not a single one of them was capable of countering the magic he had on his arsenal when he was assisted by the Ancient One via possession. When all of them had been dealt with, Naruto took the time to go through his documents and learned all his hidden secrets that he had kept hidden from the world, and he was right to do so, since it would have warranted his execution if the world knew even a fraction of the bad things he had done. But amongst all the scrolls he had found information about the so-called Uchiha massacre and had taken the time to mentally prepare Sasuke for the truth of what he learned. And as he expected, Sasuke took the information hard. And unexpectedly he broke down into tears over the truth about the loss of his family. The fact that he had thought that his family had been in the right but they instead were planning a coup against the rest of the village. He knew that Itachi had tried to patch things up and stop it all from escalating, but Danzo had used the Sharinganai he had stolen from the corpse of Shisui to alter their father and force the issue. He had done this so as to kill off most if not all the Uchiha excluding the children, so as to kidnap them and turn them into root shinobi. But what sickened him even more was the fact that he was also going to use them to harvest their eyes to gain more power for himself. But that wasn't even the worst bit, since Sasuke asked Naruto to follow him and use his magic over time to see exactly what had happened to his clan that day. Naruto had asked him if that was what he truly wanted, and Sasuke had answered with a yes with conviction in his voice. He wanted to see for himself what happened without any form of lies. So Naruto used his magic to open up a window into the past to show the both of them what had happened. There he saw Itachi kill off only those who were for the coup against the village, but it was another who claimed to be Madara had slaughtered those who were innocent of any wrongdoing, such as the children. Sasuke had simply left to be alone after he was shown all of this, and Naruto had truly feared for his friend's sanity from seeing all of this for himself. Yet his fear was put to rest when Sasuke found him 3 days later and thanked him for showing him the truth on the matter and told him of his new goal in life, to avenge his clan and restore its honor to what it once was in the past. Well, this has been informative, said Kakashi as Sasuke had finished, and I have to say that was a lot to take in. So now that we are a squad we have but one test left to do. But I thought that we were done with tests now that we were assigned a squad. Asked Yakumo, since she had not been told about any test when the scroll telling her that she was now officially a kunoichi along with a high showed up for her via courier. Well, you are done with the tests in the academy, this one is one that I am giving you personally. But be warned that if you fail you will be sent back to the academy. Oh no, said Naruto sarcastically as he wrote the final bit of what was needed for his book and then closed it. Not the academy. Sasuke and Yakumo chuckled as they heard him say this, since being sent to the academy was not really much of a punishment for failure. Okay, Mr. Tough Guy, let's see how you feel after tomorrow's test at Field 7. Also, word of advice, don't eat anything, since you will mostly puke it back up from what I have in store for you. Kakashi then disappeared in a swirl of leaves. So I'll see you guys tomorrow then, said Sasuke as he left the group with his hands in his pocket. Nice cheerful guy there, said Yakumo with a roll of her eyes. You get used to it, said Naruto, but before you leave I need a bit of your blood for something. What do you need my blood for? Asked Yakumo with a raised eyebrow, since the request was fairly strange to hear even from him. It's a secret, said Naruto, but I assure you that it will not hurt you in the long run. To be honest, if it was anyone else who asked me to do this, I would have just flat out said no, said Yakumo with a smile on her face, but since this is you who asked I will oblige. She held out her hand towards Naruto, who conjured up a very sharp knife. He sliced it against her palm and pressed it on the final page of the book he had spent the last few years writing. Once there, her hand glowed for a bit as a glyph appeared on her hand for a brief second before it disappeared. Naruto then used healing magic to heal up the cut so that it was as if it was never there in the first place. So what exactly did you just do? I'll tell you when everything is done, said Naruto, but for now I think it is best that we go our separate ways until tomorrow. Okay, said Yakumo as she prepared to leave herself, I'll see you tomorrow then. Naruto sat there as he saw her leave, but the smile on his face disappeared shortly after she did. So did you get all the information you wanted to learn, said Naruto out loud as he placed his book once more in his shirt to send back to his desk. As he said that, Minato as well as Kushina and the twin sisters appeared next to him. Naruto, we need to talk, said Minato. Of course we do, said Naruto as he rolled his eyes, that is why you ordered Kakashi to change the location of our squad's meeting, so that you can eavesdrop on us so as to learn as much as you could about me. How did you? Started Kushina in surprise before she was cut off. Because I am not an idiot. I pay attention and notice these sorts of things since I was trained to do so. Don't interrupt your mother, said Minato sternly. What mother? Asked Naruto impassively, since I am an orphan. We are getting off track here, said Narumi, who wanted to get this meeting back on track so that they could give Naruto the good news personally. You are right, said Minato. Naruto, I have come to explain that there has been a mix-up with the squad placement. You were meant to be on squad 11, but somehow there was some sort of confusion and you ended up on 7 instead. I have come to introduce you to your squad. There was no mix-up, said Naruto as he pulled out a scroll and twirled it on his finger for a bit as he talked. I knew that you would try to force me onto a squad with your daughter as well as your wife when reinstated as the Hokage, but luckily for me I was gifted this by Gramps just this morning. Naruto tossed the scroll in his hand towards Minato, who looked at it for a second before he opened it up to read the contents within. His eyes opened wide as he saw what was written within it. What does it say, honey? Asked Kushina as she saw his wide-eye look. It is the last orders of the previous Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, said Naruto as he stood up and stretched a bit since his limbs had gotten a bit stiff from sitting so long, and it states that I am officially a member of Squad 7, alongside one Yakumo Kurama and one Sasuke Uchiha. This was the last signed order of the previous Hokage, and as is tradition since the founding of the village, that it can't be changed by the successor as you were trying to do. And as stated, only through my own volition can I change squads. Minato could say nothing more as he just stared at the scroll in disbelief as he heard all of this. And since our meeting has seemed to come to a conclusion, said Naruto as he stood up from his seat, which disappeared along with the other two when he got up. Then I shall be on my way. I wish to rest up for my final test with my squad tomorrow. Brother, said Narumi as she began to tear up a bit at seeing his coldness towards them like this. Sure, he had been this way when they had first met, but she had expected him to warm up to them by now. Please don't go. I don't know how many times I must state that I am nothing more than an orphan until you finally register it in that head of yours, said Naruto as he stopped walking to speak his last words. Why must you be so hard on your family, said Jiraiya as he and Tsunade appeared to join at this group meeting. Because I have no family, said Naruto matter-of-factly with a raised eyebrow, since he wondered where this was going now that the pervert and the addict were here to lecture him about forgiving his family. Simple as that. If that one statement alone brings them pain or grief of any sort, it is not my problem, nor is it my fault, since I am simply stating what I was and still remain to this day. Oh come on kid, said Jiraiya with a smile to try and lighten up the dreary mood that had been set in place before his arrival. Surely there is a way to make amends for all that has happened. Just say the word and we will do it if we can as a show that we are trying to patch this all up. Anything I ask, said Naruto with an amused look on his face as he looked back to Minato and his family. They all quickly nodded their approval since they wanted to make amends as Jiraiya had stated. Well, if that be the case, there is but one thing that you could do to make this all better. What is it, son? Asked Minato with a bit of hope that their family could be whole once more. You are quite good with the Hirishin jutsu you made and use, started Naruto before he was interrupted. If you wish to learn it then I will teach it to you, said Minato with a smile. I don't care to learn it, said Naruto impassively as he waved his hand to show his mood, I was just stating a fact. The jutsu allows you to manipulate time and space in a way that allows teleportation. So what you have to do is develop a new jutsu, one capable of traveling back into the past. There you must tell your younger self to not abandon me as you yourself have, and only then will I even consider forgiving you. But what you have just asked for is impossible, said Kushina with a look of shock that Naruto would demand such a thing to mend their severed family ties. So is the notion of me ever forgiving you, said Naruto as he once more began to walk away. But he only took 3 steps before he was stopped by what he heard next. Why do you hate us? Shouted Natsumi, who let her anger get the better of her at this point since she just couldn't hold it in anymore. Naruto actually turned around to look at them this time. I don't hate you, said Naruto simply. Then why, was all Natsumi was able to say before Naruto cut her off. Let me finish what I was going to say before you continue with that question. I don't hate you, but at one point I did. What sane person would not given the circumstances that I was put through? I was nothing more than a newborn child and I was left to fend off those who wanted the beast who killed so many of their families dead. And you gave them the outlet to vent out all their anger and rage. 7 years I was alone with nothing more than Gramps giving me kind words of encouragement whenever he found me beaten to a pulp and patched my wounds himself since several doctors at the hospital attempted to poison me while I recovered as well as some pocket money that couldn't buy me jack shit in this village since the people purposely overpriced me on everything. I ate out of trashes since I was starving and had the will to survive. I stitched scraps of clothes together so I had something to wear and would not freeze like they wanted me to. I was shunned by all who were my age since their parents spoke of me as a monster and warned them that I was not to be trusted, but finally I made a friend after 7 long lonely years. I knew who you were to me even though Hiruzen never told me since any moron could look at a picture and then me and instantly see the resemblance. I hated you for leaving me to rot while you lived the good life elsewhere and yet after so many years of hatred I finally realized that you were not worth my hate. Hate is for those who seek revenge against their subjects of hatred, but I had no such wish. Time destroyed any emotions I had for you all, and all I feel for you now is pure uncaring. So I will say this again that I don't hate you, I simply don't care about any of you at all. Kushina and her daughters couldn't help but cry as they heard the story of what Naruto had to go through in his youth. But we can still fix all of that, said Minato in a desperate attempt to try and bridge the gap between them. We can teach you so much. What it is you think you can teach me I already know quite well and have excelled where you have failed, said Naruto with an uncaring face. But only the few of us know how to use the Rasengan, said Jiraiya, and only Minato can use the Hirishin. So how can you? Easy, said Naruto as he held up his hand. Within it arose a condensed ball of energy akin to the Rasengan, but made out of pure magic instead of chakra. And yet unlike your incomplete form, said Naruto before he added fire to the mix, making it burn red before he dispelled it away since his point had been made. And as for the Hirishin Naruto simply teleported to the other end of the roof and stood on the railing. Well you can plainly see I am able to do so without a seal of any kind. But how, was all that Minato was able to say since his mind was slow to process all of this. I had a great teacher, said Naruto as he walked along the railing, as if he was walking on solid ground. Who was your teacher, asked Tsunade in genuine curiosity as to who could teach such techniques as was shown to them. It only made her wonder what else the kid had been taught while they were away training the twins. The being known as the Ancient One, said Naruto, and that is all you will get from me on the subject. But while you may have learned offensive skills, I can still teach you in the medical field. I am gonna have to stamp that proposal out with a big no stamped in permanent ink, said Naruto with a shake of his head. And for 2 reasons. Which are, asked Tsunade who was slightly pissed that her offer had just been shut down like that. Many people would kill to be trained by a Sannin like her and yet he just dismissed it so easily. The first of which is that I have been fully trained in medical procedures, said Naruto as he hopped off the railing, since he had reached the end of it, and I am happy to say that my skills have exceeded your own. That seems highly unlikely, said Tsunade. Let me throw out a random example then. If you were forced to operate on a man whose spine has been severed, thus leaving him crippled, do you have any sort of procedure to cure the man of said crippled status? No I do not. But there is none to be had for it is impossible. And it is that mindset alone that makes my skills far better than yours, said Naruto as he began to twirl his sword in his hand while it was still sheathed. Because nothing is truly impossible if you look hard enough. But then again you are well known to not be able to look up or away from a bottle of any sort of alcohol, so it is of no surprise that you lack the skills needed to cure such a case. How dare you, growled Tsunade who was pissed that her medical skills were being mocked by this brat and she would not stand for it. Naruto, said Jiraiya as he tried to help defuse the massive amount of killer intent that was beginning to leak out of Tsunade, I would apologize if I was you. You were me, said Naruto with smirk on his face, then I would be nothing more than a pervert who sells porn and really only accomplished one thing in life, being training a student that easily surpassed you. But given the fact that your perverted ass never mastered the Sage mode you worked so hard to learn nor perfected the Rasengan like you wanted, it wasn't that much of a hurdle to surpass now, was it? Why, you little, was all that he said before Minato himself had to hold Jiraiya back from trying to strike Naruto. Tsunade was not restrained though and began to stomp towards him in a menacing way, yet Naruto was not scared in the slightest about it. Apologize, growled Tsunade through gritted teeth, now. Or you will what, said Naruto with an uncaring look on his face. I am not afraid of a woman who spent so many years drowning herself in alcohol or gambling dens all over Fire Country. I am not afraid of a woman who fears the sands of time itself and hides her true image behind an illusion. I see the real you, and to be honest, I don't know why you are scared to show the real you since it's not that bad, but then again it is your vanity that stops you. It's hard to believe that you even remember to breathe with the amount of brain cells you have most likely killed off from your addiction. This was all Naruto was able to say since Tsunade had seen red and tried to punch his head off. Now if this had been her grandmother Mito Uzumaki, then Naruto would have needed to do more than simply lean back to dodge the blow, but Tsunade was not a grandmother and had never taken the time to refine her fighting style. So since she attacked like any standard brawler would, albeit one capable of punching buildings down, her moves were easily predictable and he was able to dodge with no troubles at all. She had put her all into the punch, which meant she was off balance, which Naruto capitalized on and knocked her off her feet with a simple sweep kick. When she was on the ground, she tried to get up and yet couldn't since Naruto put his foot on her chest and pointed his still-sheathed sword at her head. Your anger betrays you, said Naruto sagely, you, who is a Sannin, claim to be strong, even though the title was given to you by a man who thoroughly beat you years ago, and yet you wear that shame like a badge of honor. You were just beaten by a young man who you demanded respect from because you bear said title. I want you to remember this day and hopefully learn something from it. But knowing you from what I have gathered, you will most likely forget it since you will drink it all away in the end. Naruto then slammed his sword into her head hard enough to knock her out, and now she was out cold. As you can plainly see, said Naruto as he placed his sword back on his back like it was before and began to walk away for what felt like the 100th time in the past hour, I can take care of myself. So with all that in mind, I shall take my leave since I wish to rest before tomorrow. So back home to the sanctum I go. Wait brother, said Narumi in a desperate voice. What is it now, asked Naruto with a sigh. I want to make a bet with you. Naruto heard her say this and simply laughed as she said it. And what is so damn funny? Asked Narumi, who failed to see the humor in any of this. It's funny to see that the gambling legacy of one Tsunade Senju lives on into the next generation. But you have piqued my interest a bit, so what is the bet? The fight between our squad and your own. If we win you must join ours. And if we lose we will stop pestering you about it in the future. No, said Naruto flatly. Why? Asked Natsumi with a cocky smile on her face, which was strange since she was crying not 5 minutes ago, afraid to lose. It's not that at all, said Naruto with a wave of his hand, it is just that there is no need to get the other two of my squad involved since this is about me and has nothing to do with them in the slightest. So I'll take the bet, but I'll take you all one alone. And to make this more interesting I will allow you to substitute Sakura for any third person of your choice, minus our Hokage of course, since that's just cheating there. I allow this since she is really nothing more than the bare minimum of what a Kunoichi is meant to be, since she is too much of a fangirl. I believe she can grow stronger with the proper teacher, but it will be a while before she gets to that point. So then when do you want to do this? Tomorrow after my squad test with my sensei, said Naruto simply, since I would prefer to get it done first thing in the morning. Then it is settled, said Kushina with a bit of hope that things would work out in the end after all. Yes it is, said Naruto as he jumped onto the railing again, but I wonder why are you trying so hard to force me onto your squad? Because even if you somehow manage to win this bet, nothing between us will change in the end. All you will have done is prove my point in the fact that you people don't like to feel guilt and looking at me makes you full of it. You want this feeling to go away and will try anything to manage it and say to hell with what I want because we don't want to feel this way anymore. Think about that for a while and then ask yourselves again why doesn't he want to be part of our family? And you will come to an answer that will most likely surprise you. Naruto then hopped off the roof into a portal that he had opened while he monologues a bit there, and by the time that they made it to the railing and looked over the edge to see where he had gone, he was already gone without a trace of him ever being there. Naruto woke up early in the morning and showered as he usually did. He then went into the massive kitchen that the sanctum had within it, which was no surprise since it was a school and usually held more than just 2 people or 1 person and the spirit of another who was capable of staying within this plane of existence for such a long time. When he got there he began to cook up food for himself as well as his squad mates since he was fairly sure that they took Kakashi's advice too literal and skipped breakfast. Now while it is true that there were things that could scare a person to lose their lunch upon looking at it or experiencing it, but Naruto had seen many things that were far worse than a teacher who was consistently late and covered up one eye with illusionary abilities. The Ancient One had shown him the vast amount of threats that went from dimension to wreak havoc wherever they go. The Ancient One had explained that she had used up the vast amount of magical power she possessed to duplicate the Sanctum Sanctorum and send them to all dimensions so as to aid the native people to protect themselves from future fights with these dark entities. Naruto had been chosen since his mind as well as his pure soul were perfect to learn the mystical arts that she had to teach him. And as Naruto cooked the food he was going to take his friends, he remembered the talk he had with her earlier about her time almost being up. Once it would be his duty to protect this dimension, as well as recruit those with the potential to master the art of magic. Naruto was sad that his teacher for over a century was leaving, but he knew that one day it was bound to happen and mentally prepared for that day. But now he was done cooking and quickly packed the food and utensils that they would need to eat it. Once packed, he placed it on a seal to summon when he needed it and opened a portal to his dimension. He stepped through and closed the portal back up before he continued onwards to his target area. There was no one out and about, but then again it was still 4 in the morning and there was no light in the sky just yet. Naruto made his way to the training grounds that meant his squad would take their test, as well as his own fight against his former sisters, as well as a third person he was not sure who they would pick. Yet if he was to guess it would be either Jiraiya or Tsunade, being 2 of the infamous Sannin and all, but he would plan accordingly when the fight began. Once at the field, he took to the sky to get a bird's eye view of the area. He saw that there was not much here other than some training posts and woods at the edge of the large field that made up the place. So with a clear idea of the area they would be testing in, he set out to do what he came so early in the morning to do. Several hours later. Sasuke and Yakumo showed up at 7 in the morning on the dot. When they arrived they were genuinely surprised to see Naruto there meditating as he sat cross-legged on one of the training posts. "Naruto," said Sasuke with a look of surprise on his face, "how long have you been there waiting?" "Since 4 in the morning," said Naruto as he got up and hopped off his post. "How do you sleep?" "Fairly easily really," said Naruto as he walked towards them. "But the better question is did you guys listen to Kakashi about skipping breakfast?" "Of course," said Yakumo as she felt her stomach rumble a bit since she had not eaten anything since dinner yesterday. "Yakumo," said Naruto as he pat her on the shoulder, "you know I love you, but you got to take his strange bits of advice with a grain of salt. Lucky for you I came prepared." Naruto's hand then glowed a bit before he slammed it onto the ground. From his point of impact, a sheet appeared on the ground and upon it was a large breakfast. There were diced potatoes, pancakes, eggs, and muffins. "This looks delicious," said Yakumo as her mouth began to water from the delicious aromas that came from the food. "Well dig in," said Naruto as he picked up a plate and put food on it. Sasuke and Yakumo sat down as well on the sheet and began to dig in as well. They gorged themselves for the next hour and talked for a bit before they heard a voice from behind. "Didn't I warn you about eating anything before this test?" said Kakashi as he stood there with a book in his hand. "And you expect us to take the advice of a man who is always late to his own meetings and openly reads pornography in public," said Naruto, "but well we are done eating, so would you like this last muffin? Unlike the last time this is not a trick." "What kind is it?" asked Kakashi, who was skeptical about it since the last time he took something Naruto offered him, it had shocked the hell out of him. "Blueberry," said Naruto as he tossed the last muffin towards Kakashi. He caught it, took a quick sniff to make sure that it wasn't laced with something or the other. Once he was sure that it wasn't tampered with, he moved his book to cover his face, since he never really showed it to people, and then quickly ate the muffin. He had to admit it was delicious. Naruto waited until his friends were off the sheet before he used his magic to make all that was on it disappear. Once all of it was gone, Naruto stood side by side with his squad. "Well then, hello Squad 7, said Kakashi with an eye smile as he put his book away for now, "good morning. We already know each other's names, so there is no need for introductions like before. So let's move on then." Kakashi pulled out an alarm clock that he set down on the shortest of the training posts, and once he placed it down, he pushed the top of it, setting the alarm to noon. "So for this test there is a time limit," said Kakashi as he held up 2 silver bells on strings. "Today's test is to get one of these bells from me. But since there's only 2 of them, one of you will fail this test and not only be tied to one of these logs as a way to pound the point home that you have failed in such a simple task, but you will also be sent back to the academy for another year before you are able to attempt this test once more." Naruto and his friends looked at each other for a second as they heard this before they looked back, since Kakashi still had more to say about the matter. "You are allowed to use weapons and jutsu against me for this test," said Kakashi with a serious look on his face, "since you won't be able to get this unless you have the will to kill me. So when you are ready you can begin." Kakashi then took his book back out and began to read it once more as he waited for his team to attack him. "Does he take us for fools?" asked Naruto in a hushed voice so that their sensei would not be able to hear them. "Apparently he does," said Sasuke in agreement. "What do you mean?" asked Yakumo, who was a bit out of the loop here. Naruto and Sasuke had been taught by two separate people who had made it a point to think about things differently from other people. Orochimaru was fairly good at teaching on the subject, and the Ancient One was the epitome of the subject, since everything she taught was like that. Yakumo unfortunately was not trained by anyone like that, so she did not see the point of all this. "Think about it fully," said Sasuke as he used his hands to paint a full picture for her to see. "We are three supposed Genin level shinobi who are being tasked with fighting a Jonin level 1. We are being told to separate ourselves so that we can get a bell for ourselves. Now why would they think that a genin fresh out of the academy would be able to defeat him? Plus even if only two of us can become shinobi like he said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders, I have no need for it and would give either of you the bell since I am a sorcerer, not a shinobi." "Okay, I get it," said Yakumo as she finally got it. "So what do we do now?" "That all depends on how you wish to end this," said Naruto as he held up two fingers, "because I can end this in a matter of seconds with numerous amounts of the abilities I have under my control. So we can do this quickly or in a complex long way that will be hilarious for all of us to observe." "I am kind of curious as to the second plan," said Yakumo with a raised eyebrow, since it seemed like this would be fun. "I second that," said Sasuke with a smile, since Naruto's plans were always amusing to some extent. "Okay then," said Naruto as he leaned in close and spoke of his plan. While he did this, Kakashi was watching them while still reading his book. But a minute later, Sasuke ran away from the group towards the wooded area. "So the Uchiha is the first one to run away," said Kakashi as he didn't even make a move to go and retrieve him in any way. "I'm not gonna lie, but to be honest I thought it would be Yakumo who gave up first." "So not only are you constantly late, but you are apparently sexist as well," said Naruto while shaking his head. He then lifted his hand and applied magic to it. Once he did, Kakashi's book flew through the air and landed in Naruto's hand, where he then proceeded to burn it via green magical flames. "And that is why you are a failure as a sensei." Naruto's statement did exactly as he thought it would and pissed off Kakashi immensely. Not only were his teaching skills being put into question, which alone was enough to piss him off, but that book was a first edition autographed Icha book that he had yet to finish reading and now was never going to since it was burned to ash. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" growled Kakashi, who was understandably pissed that his book had been destroyed as it had been. "The better question you should ask yourself, dear sensei, is," said Naruto as he smiled in a manner that was not friendly in any sense of the word, "as if I care." Kakashi lost it when he said that and used his hand to uncover his Sharingan that was underneath his hai to conserve chakra. Naruto smiled more as he did since this was part of the plan, and as soon as he uncovered it, Yakumo stepped forward with a matching grin on her face as magical power began to channel into her eyes. Kakashi stopped from rushing forward since he had been taught to be wary of an opponent's tactics. Yakumo's eyes burned bright orange as she laughed manically like some cliché villainous in a move. Her pendant glowed with the dark energy that was contained within as she channeled it into her hands. Sharp claws grew from the tips of her fingers that were jet black that she then slashed at Kakashi, who tried to move, but his body was not able to move. Kakashi quickly looked at himself and saw that the slashes had done no physical damage to his person, which begged the question as to what the hell did Yakumo do just then. It was then that a massive metallic door appeared in front of him, and before he could do anything it opened up slowly so that Kakashi could see the darkness that was contained within. What happened next though made him break out into a cold shiver since he saw a massive eye that opened sideways and looked at him in a way that he was certain that it was looking into his very soul. Kakashi felt as it opened the whole way since a pulse burst out that made his vision go blurry for a second and he suffered a bit of a headache from it as well. As soon as his vision came to, he saw that the door was gone, but so was the field he was in as well. He found himself surrounded by what he could only assume was a dome made of darkness, which let not a speck of light inside, so he was not able to see anything around him but himself, which was only because his Sharingan that he was able to do that. He took a step forward to try and see if he could find a way out of what he was assuming to be a fairly advanced ninjutsu, which he had to give it to her that she was a prodigy of the subject and that Kurenai had made a terrible decision to abandon her like she had. But he only took one step before another eye opened up in front of him, this one projected light upon Kakashi as it looked at him. Then to his horror, hundreds more opened up all around him, all looking at him with such intense stares that made him afraid to move. "What the hell is this?" shouted Kakashi as he tried to dispel the genjutsu that he was trapped in, but no matter how much chakra put into it, the illusion remained. "These are the eyes of truth," said Naruto, who appeared before Kakashi as a small floating flame was behind him so he could be seen, "and they shall stare into you mind and soul, to find out your greatest fear and make it a reality." "Oh please Kami no," whispered Kakashi as the color on his face disappeared completely. Naruto smiled as his flame extinguished and he disappeared from sight. The eyes all began to melt into the ground into a massive puddle. Out of the puddle, multiple figures arose. The figures were covered in the goo that made them up, yet the goo lifted off of them and flew into the sky. The figures all turned towards Kakashi at once, and to his utter horror, they all turned into Might Guy. But what made it worse was the fact that they were all butt naked and oiled up to the point of shining from the light that shined from the massive eye that was now directly above them and looking at him. Kakashi tried to run away, but he tripped on some of the gooey residue and was immediately dogpiled by all the Might Guys as they shouted about showing him their personal version of their springtime of youth. While this was all happening, Naruto and Yakumo were seeing this in an orb that Yakumo conjured up to watch. This was her most powerful illusionary ability that she had, and to be honest, she liked using it. She and Kakashi thought alike when it came to their views of Kurenai making a dumb decision and choosing to abandon her. She was hoping to show that bitch this ability one day and see what she was truly afraid of. But in the end she ended the illusion and saw Kakashi had broken out into a massive cold sweat. He was curled up into a fetal position on the ground and was crying while asking for someone to make it stop. As he did, Naruto simply walked over and plucked the bells from his belt. "So now that you know that we are a force to be reckoned with, let's come to a mutual agreement shall we," said Naruto as Kakashi looked up at Naruto with fear in his heart since he was completely unsure as to what the hell else his students could do to torment him as such. "You show up when you call a meeting on time from now on, and we don't show people what it is that you truly fear." Imagine what the other Jonin would think if they knew what it is that the infamous Kakashi Haddock is afraid of. What would Guy say? "Oh please no," said Kakashi as he shook his hands in a comedic fashion to show that he would listen to what was basically being demanded of him. "Glad we could come to an understanding," said Naruto as he walked back and tossed each of the bells to his two squad mates, with Sasuke coming back just a minute again. Naruto had warned that those with extra sensitive perceptive abilities such as a Sharingan would be susceptible to Yakumo's illusionary abilities. So Sasuke left the area since he didn't want to face his fears for the second time in his life, which was the day his family was massacred when he was 7. Sasuke had just finished laughing as he saw the same thing that the other two had seen and caught the bell tossed to him. "So as you can see," said Sasuke with a smile on his face, "we passed your test since we worked together like you wanted." "So you have," said Kakashi as he got to his feet and brushed himself off, "since you have cooperated and worked together to get the bells from me you have passed and are now officially Genin ranked shinobi. So we shall meet again at 9 in the morning at HQ to begin team building missions tomorrow. And remember to be there on time," said Yakumo as she tossed the orb of the memory in her hands to bring the point home. She then placed it on her pendant, which consumed it to store away for later. Kakashi nervously nodded in agreement, but then he disappeared in a swish of leaves. "So since we are all done here," said Sasuke as he began to walk away himself, "I'll see you guys tomorrow at 9. I need to go and train with Orochimaru for a bit." And with a wave of his hand, he disappeared as well in a swish of leaves. "Should I leave as well?" asked Yakumo with a raised eyebrow. "I would prefer it if you stay since I have a surprise for you at the end of it all," said Naruto with a smile. The smile made Yakumo blush a bit as she saw it. She brushed a bit of her hair back as she did and honestly wondered what the surprise was that he had for her. Her mind kind of went wild with all sorts of ideas from a lovely nature to a more sexual and raunchy one. Her thoughts went from a simple flower to an engagement ring and a proposal that led to a passionate night of lovemaking and their future children, and the more that she thought about it, the more red her face became. As Yakumo stood there with her face going all red with her hands holding her cheeks as it did, Naruto noticed a fairly large group heading their way. Some of them he was expecting since it was his former family as well as the two members of the Sannin that were on their side when it came to thinking that Naruto should just forgive and forget so that they could be one big happy family. Orochimaru was the one out of the three of them that saw what had happened to Naruto in his youth and blamed the parents for putting him through such hell while they trained their other children. He had taken one look at them when they came back to the village and instinctively knew that while they did have some potential being the offspring of two infamous shinobi, their potential was easily overshadowed by their brother. Hence why he wanted to train him personally, but Naruto had found another teacher who he had to admit taught him more than he himself could ever possibly teach. Now what made the group larger than he expected was the fact that the other genin that Naruto had graduated with as well as their own senseis and parents were there to most likely observe the match that was going to take place. Hell, even Hiruzen was there himself along with his grandson, since he was curious as to how Naruto, who he had not a single doubt would win this match, and his grandson wanted to see the person his grandfather was always talking about. Naruto thought about it and he truly wondered how these people even knew about it in the first place. But then he saw Ino in the group and he had an idea as to the how. Ino was well known for her gossiping ring, which made her infamous to other students since she was the person you went to when you wanted information. Yet even though she was fairly good at her hobby, there was one subject that many girls wanted to know more about and went to her constantly to learn about. Naruto. Naruto to the females of his age group was a mystery of a man. No one really knew much about him since he was never really open to anyone other than his one friend Sasuke. And what little they did know was that he was cool-headed and far more intelligent than even Shikamaru was, which baffled them all since he was considered to be a prodigal genius. Plus add in good looks and the lack of an overinflated ego such as Kiba had before it was shattered when he fought Naruto years ago, and in their eyes he was perfect boyfriend material. So they wanted to know more about him so that they could strike up a conversation and begin their seduction of the man. Yet there was one major hiccup to their plans. Ino could find nothing on the man at all. No amount of digging around helped, nor did digging into his mind, since he had telepathic abilities of his own that dwarfed hers by far. This had been surprising since she was sure that only her family had that ability. She had never told anyone about it since for some reason she felt as though no one would ever believe her if she did. She had tried to read Sasuke's mind as well, since he was friends with Naruto and would know enough about the guy, but that failed as well, since Sasuke had a strong will that she could not break through, so she could not gain access. So Ino went with Plan Z, since all other plans were basically dead in the water, which was to follow the man when able, or use her gossip network when she wasn't to gain any and all info on him, so that she could begin her own quest to acquire his love for herself. And as such she had heard about the fight between him and his supposed sisters, since she was still wondering if there was any truth to that statement, since Naruto had been an orphan his whole life, and if he actually did have a family to call his own, where in the hell had they been, and why did they abandon him like they had? "I see that you brought quite the crowd with you," said Naruto as he stood there with his arms crossed. "To be honest," said Narumi sheepishly, "we didn't tell people about this. They kind of figured out about it and showed up to watch. Somehow." She said that last bit as she looked at Ino, who was looking away and whistling nonchalantly. Naruto smirked at Ino, who blushed as he looked at her. "So shall we begin?" said Naruto as he stretched his arms and cracked his fingers. "Hey Naruto," said Sakura as she waved her hand to get his attention. "Where is Sasuke?" "Oh," said Naruto as he noticed her, "Sasuke left to train with Orochimaru. I'm not exactly sure where they train though, so you will have to find that out yourself." "Thanks," said Sakura as she left to find her beloved Sasuke. Naruto and Sakura got along fairly well over the years. They weren't friends by any means, but they were at least friendly. She had been quite a bitch to him when he had first joined the academy, since he was able to get close to the one person that she herself wanted and honestly thought that Naruto was gay and trying to corrupt Sasuke into becoming homosexual so as to seduce him. She was young and anger kind of made her mind think of the strangest scenarios. Naruto had sensed her hostility towards him in time and took the time to talk to her to see what could be done to extinguish it. So they talked and Naruto laughed at her assumptions. He assured her that he was not gay and was simply friends with Sasuke since they shared pain in their hearts and as the saying went, birds of a feather flock together. From then on Naruto would always point Sakura in Sasuke's direction so that she could find him if asked. Sasuke was pissed that he would do that, but Naruto would simply state that he should think of it as training of sorts. Since if he could escape from a fanatic fangirl that would follow him through hell itself for a chance to win his heart over, then he could escape anything that the world throws at him. While he accepted that explanation, he was still pissed about it and swore to get Naruto back one way or another. Naruto had chuckled at the threat and stated that Shikamaru had said the same thing about winning in shogi against him, but it never happened. And just as he thought, Sasuke had yet to make good on his promise, but he had a feeling that he was just waiting for Naruto to drop his guard first. "So now that we are all here," said Naruto as he clapped his hands together and rubbed them a bit, "have you decided who will take Sakura's place in this little bout of ours?" "We have," said Natsumi with a grin on her own face as she said it. "Let me guess," said Naruto, "you chose Tsunade since she wanted the opportunity to avenge her own defeat at my hands just yesterday." "Wait, what?" shouted Tenten, who was shocked to hear this. Tsunade was and had always been her idol since she was the symbol of what a strong woman should be like. And now she heard that Naruto of all people was able to defeat her. It was just impossible to picture in her mind no matter how she played it out. "Oh yes," said Naruto as he became aware of Tsunade's glare towards him, "I beat her fairly easily. I just used her anger against her and with a single swing of my blade while it was still sheathed knocked her out." Now I'm not surprised to hear that she wouldn't announce this to people, but then again what would people think when they hear that such a strong woman had been beaten by a newly made genin? Tsunade began to snarl as Naruto said this since she was pissed about it. She didn't want people to know about it since it was humiliating. Then again, now that I think about it, she as well as her teammates were named the Sannin when they lost to Hanzo in aim. So now that I beat you, does that mean that I get to name you since apparently you are named by those who beat you? Tsunade's face went red in rage as Kushina had to hold her back from rushing forward and killing him for his insulting tone. So if that is the case, I think I'll call you Yoi, means weak in Japanese, since it took one blow to take you down. You may have the strength to crack the earth itself with your fists, yet you have none of the endurance to back it up. You are a glass cannon since you are all power and no defense. Kushina was having a real hard time restraining Tsunade at this point, who was seconds away from breaking free from her grip. So is that what your father did? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Did your father beat you before he named you? Then it just became kind of a tradition of yours. That was the final straw, since Tsunade finally broke free from Kushina's grip and rushed forward with her fist raised with complete intent to kill the target of her rage. Yet in a repeat of events, Naruto once again easily dodged a blow towards his head, but this time instead of using his blade to knock her out, he simply chopped her in the back of the head and knocked her out that way. Lesson 101 When it comes to fighting an opponent with obvious anger issues, said Naruto as he held up a finger, piss them off to force their hand into attacking you. They make a mistake and you exploit it as I have just done. So now that she is dealt with, I need to know who you chose to replace Sakura. Was I right when I assumed it was her? No, said Narumi with surprise in her voice. Yes, she had seen Tsunade get beaten by Naruto once already, but she didn't think that Naruto would get her with the same trick twice. But her surprise was nowhere near the amount that Tenten had seeing her idol getting beaten like that. So who is it? Me, said Kushina as she stepped forward. Huh, said Naruto with a hint of surprise in his voice, I didn't expect you of all people to challenge me. To be honest, I was expecting Jiraiya or Tsunade. Kudos. So now that everyone is here, said Minato as he stepped forward himself, and witnesses are here to observe the match, we can begin. Naruto took his spot about 15 yards away from his opponents. There he pulled out the black book he had been working on for years and tossed it behind him. Several crimson strands appeared from the back of his cloak and brought the book back and strapped to his back. Then let us begin, said Naruto as he got into a defensive fighting stance that Iron Fist had taught him. Minato used his hand to signal the beginning of the fight, and as they did, Kushina and her daughters all launched multiple chakra chains at Naruto in a wide yet tight arc so that he could not dodge them all. To Naruto, this was all moving in slow motion for him, since his reflexes had always been good even when he was younger, but his training with Iron Fist only increased them exponentially to the point of being beyond human capabilities. Make no mistake. He could still be hurt, it was just a matter of having to try a lot harder than normal to do so. May the might of Sekhmet flow through me and shatter all that stand before me, said Naruto with a smile as his hand darkened from the destructive energy that he channeled through it. Once in place, he simply smiled as all who surrounded the area saw him just standing there and wondered why the hell he wasn't even trying to dodge the attack sent his direction. Naruto's posture loosened up as the chains neared him and it seemed like he would be encased in them. Naruto simply snapped his fingers with the hand that had the dark power bestowed to him by the Egyptian goddess of destruction. The snap was loud, yet the effects were far worse. The ground in front of him leading all the way towards Kushina and her daughters shattered into pebbles that then turned to sand. The chains shattered into millions of tiny pieces that were barely visible as nothing more than shiny spots in the air, since they reflected light for a brief second before they vanished. Naruto had been taught early on in his studies that gods as well as demons existed in all dimensions and universes. That a magic user could call upon their power from any dimension they wish if they were strong enough, but the kicker was that if the power gifted was not within the native dimension as the entity itself that gave it, the power was greatly diminished from traveling dimensions. In this case that was a good thing since Sekhmet was known to be able to wipe out life itself, and that was not what he wanted to happen here. As his former family members got up from having the ground literally vanishing from beneath them, Naruto clapped his hands and used magic to summon a simple dark wooden staff. There was no magical power within it, since it was nothing more than a training staff, a good quality one at that. Naruto charged forward as Kushina finally got her footing back, but she was too late since Naruto hit her with the staff at the end in the chest, the power of which sent her back quite a bit. But he didn't stop there since he knew he had to do more to keep her down for the count since she was infamous throughout the lands. So he rushed forward and struck her in quick succession with his staff in multiple places, faster than she was able to counter since she was still dazed from the magical energy pulse. Call forth the power of Zeus, said Naruto as he chopped the air with two fingers out on his hand. As he said that, Kushina was hit with a bolt of lightning. She screamed in pain since it was a painful experience, and she stood there for a second as her body smoked from the attack, as well as her hair sticking out from the electricity. She then fell forward and hit the sand hard. Naruto had used his tactical genius to eliminate her first, since she would be the actual challenge in this fight, if not dealt with quickly. The lightning was meant to subdue, and it worked since whoever really expects to be struck by lightning on such a clear day as today. "Mother," shouted Narumi as Natsumi ran to try and help their mother out. "Brother, why did you do that?" "You are shinobi," said Naruto as he spun his staff fast in one hand before he got into a defensive stance, "and yet you really don't act like it. You lack real battle experience, and seeing an ally fall like that makes you question things as such. If you can't even fathom the fact that people you know will get hurt in this profession, then you will never make it far and should simply quit." There was a gasp from the crowd as the people heard Naruto acting so cold to Narumi. A few tears began to fall from her eyes as the truth of the situation was finally starting to sink in. All she had wanted was to have her brother join their squad so that she could make amends and become a family proper, but with his intense attack against their own mother, it became abundantly clear that he truly cared nothing about them and that this whole thing was pointless. Now the first thing that came to mind was to simply give up, since the end results were pointless, but she was both in Uzumaki as well as in Namikaze, and both clans were known for their strong members. And if she gave up like that, then she would bring vast amounts of shame upon both names, and she would be damned if she did that. So she wiped a few tears off her face, and her eyes turned into a glare as the power within her began to surge as she tapped into the energy of the Kyuubi within her. While she was usually against using it when she could avoid it, since prolonged use hurt like nothing she could explain, she knew that her brother was holding back and would need to go all out if she had even the slightest chance here. But luckily for her, she was not alone since her sister joined up with her after she made sure that their mother was alive and breathing. "Let's show him all that he could have learned if he had simply accepted us as family," said Natsumi. Narumi nodded as she heard this, and the two of them began to scream as both of them summoned up a tail's worth of power each, which was symbolized by the tail made of energy that was behind them. "Chronos," whispered Naruto as his eyes lit up a bit as green outlined his pupils, "lend me your sight." With that, the two sisters rushed forward to attack. The power he was using allowed him to see several seconds into the future in the immediate area and as such was able to dodge whatever the sister threw at him. But then one of them got the bright idea to use a fire jutsu. Naruto held up both hands to conjure up a magical shield to protect himself, but Natsumi used Narumi's attack as a distraction to punch him in the side. Naruto had to use both hands to keep the shield up so he couldn't block the attack. He was sent skidding since he dug his feet into the ground so as to stop himself. Natsumi pressed the attack, but Naruto was ready for her. With a deep breath, he channeled power into his fist like he had been taught and met her attack head-on. The attacks cancelled each other out since they were of equal strength, but Natsumi just kept going. Naruto ducked under another one of her punches, and when he did, he used magic to bend the elements around him to form the sand into a fist that uppercutted her with enough force to blast her away from him. It wasn't just one fist either, since there was a line of them that sent her further away from his person with each consecutive blow. She quickly got her footing back, and the two sisters tried the same tactic again, with one using a jutsu as a distraction while the other attacked. Naruto was ready for it this time though, since he launched an orb of ice towards her through the flames. The ice froze the fire itself as it passed through, and Naruto charged through it with enough force to shatter it as he did. But it then turned into a massive fist that he used to punch the two of them in a swinging arc. At this point, the pain of using the Kyuubi's energy began to start up, so they knew that they needed to use their most powerful technique now. So with all the power they could muster, they held up their hands towards each other and formed a massive crimson Rasengan that they then proceeded to launch at Naruto. Naruto simply stood his ground and unsheathed his blade. Once the jutsu was within range, he sliced it right down the center. As he did, the attack exploded, the shockwave of which sent those observing backwards from the power behind it. Ikumo was actually worried since Naruto had taken the blast head-on and feared for his safety. But once the dust settled moments later, they saw Naruto still standing within what appeared to be a bubble of energy that popped seconds later. What was more surprising was that Narumi and Natsumi were on the ground screaming in pain. "Girls!" shouted Minato as he got to his feet and ran towards them in an effort to help them. But he didn't get more than 3 steps closer because he then ran into an invisible barrier of some sort. Then a massive seal of a complex nature that would stump even the best of the Uzumaki appeared under Naruto and his former sisters. "You use demonic power with no care for your own safety," said Naruto as he grabbed a hold of the book on his back, "and this is the end result of using what is not yours to be used. While we may not be family, I cannot bear to see you two suffer for one of the many idiotic choices of one man. So allow me to aid you in your time of need." Naruto opened the book, which began to glow with a crimson glow, as he began to chant in a language that none of those in attendance had ever heard in their lives. "Practi sunt sigillum amort." Broken free from the seal of death. Ex quo tempore, usque ad supremum spiritum tuum. From this moment on till your final breath. A fabulum vestrum in generation sua. A story of your own in the making. The donum expendas, dabiter tibi enim captivitatis. The gift I bestow, yours for the taking. Sed versus und non opus usque ad tempus. Till the time whence you are needed yet again. Utir amica tua potestate presidio. Use your power to protect my friend. Once the incantation was complete, 3 barbed chains burst forth from the book and pierced all 3 of them in the chest. Yakumo screamed out Naruto's name in even greater fear, since she assumed the worst thing here. But the chains did not kill him or the 2 sisters. Instead, what it did was pulled out the parts of the Kyuubi that were sealed within the 3 of them. The process was painful, more for them than Naruto himself, since he only had the soul and none of the power. But in the end the 3 pieces became whole once more, and while it was supposed to be sealed into the book then and there, that was not what happened. In a massive burst of energy, the Kyuubi reformed in all its demonic glory in front of them. Now while Naruto had gotten to know the demon well and learned enough to know that he didn't want to rampage, but did so since people kept trying to control him like a pet, so he had to remain free. But the reforming of the body after being separated in such an unorthodox way for so long was making the situation bad, since it was like the body was on autopilot and going off of base instinct while the mind was resetting itself. Naruto used his magic to open up portals beneath the sisters to get them out of harm's way. The seal he had put up early in the morning was made to contain the demon if this exact situation happened, and so far it was working. He made a copy of himself to keep the tome open so that he could force the Kyuubi into it. As this was all happening, many shinobi appeared to surround the area so that they could help defeat the beast once and for all and avenge those who fell 13 years ago. Many arrived and truly thought that Naruto had finally became the demon they all saw him as, but they were surprised to see Naruto standing up to the demon itself. Naruto used the crimson bands of Sidorak to hold the beast in place. It took all his strength to hold him in place, but the problem with that was the fact that he needed to move the demon towards the book to capture him and was not able to do that. And to make matters worse, the beast was only growing stronger by the second as its power returned to it fully. So Naruto made multiple copies of himself that used the bands as well. Yet even with them they were barely able to budge the creature. Naruto may be fairly strong when it came to strategy as well as magical power, but when it came to physical strength he was still human. He trained his body for years to gain the amount of strength that surpassed even Mito Uzumaki herself, if just barely, yet single-handedly holding back the Kyuubi was beyond the capabilities of a single man. In the end Naruto was finally able to move it closer to the book. It screamed out in rage as it felt its power start to diminish the closer to the book it got. As its rage increased, flames appeared on its body and traveled down through the bands. One by one the copies of Naruto burned away and the real one felt as the flames burned his arms. The pain was intense, but he was not going to fail now that he had come so far. His rage empowered him just enough to make one final massive pull, which was enough to put the beast in place and get sucked into the book. Within seconds, the Kyuubi was sealed in it, and once it was the book closed itself and on the cover a symbol appeared. It was a crimson fox curled up in a swirl surrounding the kanji symbol for 9. Naruto fell to his knees in a mixture of pain as well as exhaustion, but then again it was to be expected since his arms were burnt down to the bone itself and were basically useless. That and he just subdued a massive demon, so it was expected that he would be tired. The spectators were all too stunned to say or do anything at this point since they just saw a young man who had barely entered his teen years subdue as well as seal away the strongest of Biju in a manner that the yondaime himself was incapable of. Minato was thinking the same thing since he had to seal the beast within 3 people while using a mask that was passed down through the Uzumaki clan that helped negate the price of his soul for using that jutsu. Yet one person in the crowd was of sound mind and rushed forward to help. "Naruto," screamed out Yakumo as she ran forward to comfort her crush. She held onto him as he weakly leaned against her. She cried as she saw the damage done to his arms. "Why did you do this?" "I simply did what had to be done," said Naruto weakly. He wondered about what to do at this point, but he realized that he had something for this exact moment. Within the sanctum was a massive armory of items from places that were both possible as well as impossible to get to that had been obtained by the various tenants. One item the Ancient One told him about was a small vial that contained the water from the Tree of Life. It was said that it could heal even the most fatal of wounds, but only to those who were pure of heart. Those with darkened souls would become consumed by a holy flame that would leave nothing but ash. He remembered that the Ancient One had said that one day he would need it since a vision of the future showed her that he would do something that he was not prepared for and would nearly cost him his life. Naruto smirked as he remembered this. "Naruto," said Yakumo, "please don't die on me." "Oh, you are not that lucky," said Naruto with a weak chuckle, "but I need you to do something." "Anything?" I need you to reach into my inside pocket and pull out a small glowing vial," said Naruto as he leaned back a bit so that she could do it. She did as was asked of her and held the vial carefully in her hand like her life depended on it. Naruto was able to use a bit of magic to allow others to grab things from the sanctum that he wanted them to get, such as the vial she had grabbed. "What now?" "I need you to open it and pour it into my mouth." Ikumo did just that and leaned Naruto's head back a bit so that she could pour the liquid down his throat. As Naruto swallowed the glowing liquid, she saw as it passed through his body in lines. The lines eventually reached the area that he wanted healed, and within seconds the black and seared flesh was gone and replaced by new healthy skin. Naruto waited a minute and then flexed his hand a bit to make sure everything was fine. Since everything still was working properly, he had nothing to fear. "Thank you, Yakumo," said Naruto with smile on his face that lightened up Yakumo's mood. "But why did you do all this? You could have died," shouted Yakumo as she slapped him for doing something so stupid. "True," said Naruto as he rubbed his sore cheek a bit to ease the pain, "but it was all worth it in the end." "Yet why did you do it?" "For your gift," said Naruto as he held up his hand. The tome he had used to seal the demon flew into his hand, and when it did he held it out for Yakumo to take. "What is this?" said Yakumo as she was hesitant to take the book from him. "This is a magical item called a grimoire," said Naruto. "I spent the past 37 years making this in the sanctum, since every seal had to be perfect or else it would not work. What it does is grant you massive amounts of magical power, along with a weapon that I designed with your skillset in mind." "Why would you make something like this for me?" asked Yakumo as she finally took the grimoire from his hand and held it in her hands delicately. "Because there will be times where I can't be there, and with this in your possession, I know you will be safe," said Naruto as he held his hand on her cheek with a smile on his face that made Yakumo blush when she saw it. Was all she was able to say before he pulled her into an embrace and kissed her on the lips. Yakumo was surprised by this, yet she quickly got into it and kissed back. While this was happening, the multiple Naruto fangirls who saw this all began to growl that this random girl that they had never seen before today had gotten the kiss that they felt was rightfully theirs. But Yakumo and Naruto were oblivious to all this as the kiss ended. Yakumo just stood there with a full face blush since her brain was resetting from this unexpected event. "Well, now that everything is all well," said Naruto as he began to walk away from her towards the sisters who were surrounded by medic nin as they tried to help them. "I have something I must do." "Wait," said Yakumo as she grabbed a hold of his hand, "can I have one more kiss before you go?" "Yakumo, I love you," said Naruto before he kissed her again, "this one not lasting as long as the first one, you can have one whenever you wish for one." "But what if I want one every second of every day?" "Well then I would just have to stay by your side forever, then wouldn't I?" said Naruto as he continued towards his destination. Yakumo simply blushed as she giggled like a typical schoolgirl as her inner self was cheering at finally acquiring Naruto as her boyfriend. It was then that she noticed all the glaring girls who were looking at her, but to be honest, she didn't give a damn about them. But as she just stood there and enjoyed the moment, Naruto made it to his destination and saw Minato standing over his unconscious daughters as he continually ordered his medics to heal them. "Step aside," said Naruto as he stepped forward, "allow me to fix this." "Naruto," started Minato as he looked at his son with eyes wide open to the fact that he had truly screwed up when he abandoned Naruto as he had. The fact that Naruto was capable of such feats on his own proved that his potential overshadowed his daughters by massive amounts. "Save your excuses," said Naruto as he ushered the medics away so he could do as he needed to do to help Narumi and Natsumi. "Because I don't care to hear them." Naruto held out both hands, which glowed with bright energy, as he began to chant in a forgotten language of a forgotten dimension. A bubble appeared around the sister, which if you looked hard enough you could make out the outline of a clock. Naruto used his power over manipulating time to turn back the clock for them back to the point that they were healthy and no longer in pain. Albeit they were weaker since the Kyuubi's energy was no longer within their body to use at will, but they would live. As soon as he was done, the bubble shattered and the sisters go up and check themselves to see that everything was in working order. "You helped us," said Narumi in surprise that Naruto, who she assumed just hated them even though he said otherwise yesterday, would aid them at all like this. "But why? I thought you didn't care about us." "Well, it is true that I don't care about you," said Naruto with a serious look on his face. "I can't stand around and watch you two suffer from the mistake of Minato like you had." "What mistake are you talking about?" asked Minato, who was confused as to what Naruto was talking about. "You split the Kyuubi into 3 pieces, which enraged it beyond its normal capacity of the emotion, but if I was ripped apart as such I would be pissed as well. But it worked since the beast was contained and the people saved. You sealed demonic energy into your daughters," said Naruto as he slammed his hand to his forehead, since in his mind, he wondered how he could be related to such an idiot of a man, which was slowly corrupting them from the inside. The pain they felt as they used it was their very souls dissolving from the demonic influence from within. The means to control the power lied within the mind of the beast, or in this case the soul, which you sealed into me, and then had the idiotic idea to separate the one thing that could keep the demonic energy that was slowly killing your daughters from doing just that. But was all Minato could say, since this revelation of the situation was a bit much to take in at the moment, since he had never thought about it until now, since all the facts lay before him. "You didn't think," said Naruto with a growl, "and because of that you nearly ruined 3 lives, but luckily for you only one was ruined and yet fixed itself along with the other 2. What makes it worse is the fact that those 3 lives are of your own blood, and such actions make me question why you became a father if you are just going to kill or traumatize your own children like this. You saved us?" asked Narumi, as she too was shocked to hear what would have happened if Naruto had not done as he had to aid them. "That I did. But now that everything has been resolved well enough, I am going home. It has been an exhausting morning and I need a nap to recover my strength." "But the fight is not over," shouted Natsumi as she got to her feet and prepared to attack, "since we can still fight." "Sleep," was all Naruto said as he pointed at her and Narumi. His finger glowed purple as he did, and the sisters fell over asleep as he said that. Naruto then walked back over to Yakumo, who was still red in the face and standing in place. "See you tomorrow for our first mission." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," she said as she pointed to her lips. Naruto simply smiled as he got the hint and gave her a quick peck on the lips before he opened up a portal to the sanctum. All those in attendance, except for 2 people in the group which were Yakumo and Hiruzen, saw this and gasped in surprise. They had all wondered how Naruto got around so quickly in his youth, and since he was always careful to hide away when he opened a portal, no one knew he was capable of such a feat. And they continued to stare in shock as Naruto entered it and closed it behind him. Word travels exceedingly fast within the village of Konoha, and it was an amazing thing too when you think about it. Within the hour of Naruto returning to the Sanctum Sanctorum to rest his tired body from restraining the Kyuubi long enough to seal it away in a grimoire, the villagers had heard about what he had done. This caused many a person to self-reflect on just how they treated him over the years, since for as long as they remembered they had honestly thought that he had in fact been the very demon that they hated. But now that they heard about the fact that he had sealed the real demon into a book of all things, and by himself without the aid of others, only made it hit their emotions even harder. The following events took place within the span of 1 day alone, yet while a single day went by in the real world, a whole month went by within the sanctum itself. Naruto entered the sanctum via the portal he had made, and as he closed it, he heard the gasps of the people on the other side, since they had no idea that he had such an ability at his disposal. Well, most of them didn't, since Ikumo, Hiruzen, and Sasuke did because he had used it around them. Once he was within it and the portal was closed fully, he collapsed onto the floor in sheer exhaustion. While it was true he was indeed powerful enough to restrain the most powerful of the Biju, if just barely, he had a lot of growing to do still, since he was not at his peak and had essentially been forced to push past a limit he was not quite ready to face and paid for it in the end with the amount of strain his body had to go through. He laid there for quite some time, and once he finally mustered up the proper amount of energy, he conjured up a bed to sleep on to recover his lost strength. He planned on going to his own room, but he had a feeling that he would need a few days rest to recover from what he had done, and his room went by the time of his world, so he could not do that. He fell asleep the moment he fell upon it, and to be honest, he was unsure as to how long he slept off his fatigue. But eventually his body recovered from what it had gone through, and he awoke fully rested and ready to tackle the rest of the time he had before he had to return to his own time frame. The first thing he did after he woke up was bathed himself and then ate since his stomach was growling loudly from the lack of food in his stomach. Once the food he prepared was eaten and the dishes washed and put away along with the ones he used for the picnic earlier, he headed to his inner sanctum and began to meditate heavily as he floated in the air, since this helped him train in his control over magical energies, as well as pass the time when he was not heavily training in other things. While in such a state his body sustained itself in a sense that he didn't need food or drink, or even to use the bathroom as he did so. 2 weeks went by as he meditated until anything happened, and as to what it was the Ancient One who made her presence known. "Hello master," said Naruto as he opened his eyes. As he did he softly landed onto his feet since he was no longer meditating. "Hello Naruto," said the Ancient One in a voice that was laced with the tone of someone with great wisdom, "I come bearing news that you will find unsettling my student." "What news do you bring?" asked Naruto, who was actually worried a bit now since if the Ancient One was the one bringing the news to him, it was dire news indeed. "This form is at its limit," said the Ancient One sadly. Out of all the many prodigies she had taught throughout many universes, Naruto had been one of her favorites since while the others were picking up the art of magic faster than any other student that would learn in their universe, Naruto was the one out of all of them to excel in a way none of the other ones were capable of. "And this is the last time we shall meet or converse like this." "I'm sorry," said Naruto sadly. While the Ancient One was not what he would consider family since she only taught him magic, she was at least there for him, while others only scorned his existence. He knew that this day would come from the beginning, but he was still sad about it nonetheless. "There is no need to apologize, my apprentice," said the Ancient One with a wave of her hand to calm him down. "But my power is running thin in this realm. There is no need to fret though since I have taught you all that you were meant to be taught." "What do you mean by meant to be?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "Magic is not something that can be taught fully," said the Ancient One, "for the main source that drives it is your mind alone. A mind is its own realm, one that even I cannot fully understand when it comes to another person. So I taught you all that I was able to, but it is up to you to find your own true power, since it is not something that can be taught by another." "Then I shall work hard to find that power for myself," said Naruto with a bow. "I know you will," said the Ancient One, "and it will be then that you earn the title of Sorcerer Supreme." "I will be honored to acquire that title in the future," said Naruto with a sad tone to his voice. As he said that he saw as the Ancient One began to fade away as the last of her power waned. "But before I leave, I have two things to say. Once I leave it will be up to you to recruit others in the art of magic, and for that I have gifted you with the power of sight, which will allow you to see those who can master the art." Naruto saw a flash of light that blinded him. He couldn't see anything at all other than the bright white of light in his eyes, yet he was still able to hear perfectly clear. "And my final words to you are simply sound advice. For all the time that I had known and taught you, I have seen you struggle with an emptiness that has plagued your heart for years. You have begun to heal it with your actions of acquiring friends, but that is not what your heart truly aches for. It is time for you to heal what ails you, and you know what it is that I speak of. Goodbye, my student, may you keep this world safe from the dark entities that will seek to destroy it," and with those final words, she was gone. Once she was gone, Naruto's sight finally returned to him, and he looked around to see that his master was truly gone. He wiped the tears that had flowed from his face as the power of sight channeled into his eyes. He said a silent prayer in hopes that her journey to train others went well like it had for him. Normal time zone. While Naruto had rested himself in the Sanctum Sanctorum before receiving the news that his master was finally leaving him, Sasuke and Yakumo were busy doing their own things in the real world. Sasuke was busy training with Orochimaru, who at this moment had gifted Sasuke with the signing of the snake contract. He signed it and summoned one of Manda's sons, which impressed Orochimaru, since it was fairly hard to summon up any of them even for him. It was harder to summon Manda himself, and using him was only as a last resort since when summoned he demanded human flesh as payment. So Orochimaru only ever summoned him when the need for his strength was needed, since it was no problem when an enemy was being eaten. Orochimaru warned him about that, and Sasuke simply nodded as he took his warning to heart, since it was very important. Ikumo was having a surprisingly harder time than Sasuke was with his training. She had to deal with two separate groups of people who were harassing her over the course of the day, and she was getting upset about it. The first person she had to deal with was Minato himself, who once he had his daughters in the hospital to have Tsunade and Shizune give them an extensive checkup to make sure they were okay, he had his Anbu find her and bring her to him. Once there he began to question her about Naruto, since it was clear that Naruto loved her if him kissing her was a clear indication on the matter. Ikumo only gave him vague answers, since she would not divulge information about her boyfriend that he didn't speak about himself. She saw as Minato grew more irritated the more she kept to herself, and to be honest, it slightly amused her that she could piss off such an infamous man as the fourth Hokage. It was then that Minato asked for her to hand over her grimoire that Naruto had sealed the Kyuubi into. Yakumo refused at first to hand it over, since it was hers to do as she pleased with. Plus her boyfriend had risked his very life to make the thing for her to use as protection, so there was no way in hell that she would willingly give it up. In the end she conceded to his orders when he ordered as her Hokage, but things did not go as he thought they would. She placed the book on the table and simply gestured for Minato to take it for himself. Minato did just that, but he immediately regretted it since the second he put his hand on it, he was blasted backwards right into the wall. The table the book was on was decimated into splinters from the force of the pulse alone. It then floated in the air for a bit before it returned to Yakumo's hand. She explained that Naruto had made it for her and as so no one but herself could use it. Minato tried to counter that it was too much powerful of an item to be wielded by a genin of all things, since his own daughter were barely capable of using the Kyuubi's energy when it was split between the two of them. So how would someone who was not in Uzumaki manage to control it fully? She simply said that the book was made for her alone, so it was the reason that she was able to use it. Before he could call her back, she simply snapped her fingers, which caused her body to break like glass and disappear as she used an illusion to leave. While Minato saw this with his own eyes, Yakumo had in fact simply walked out the door normally. The second problem came in the form of various young women who resided in the village, mainly those who wanted Naruto for themselves as a boyfriend. The moment they had seen Naruto kiss her in front of all of them, they had all come to an arranged agreement to eliminate this girl from the equation so that they had a chance at Naruto once more. So for the full day after the meeting was over, they secretly followed her as she went around the village and kept to herself. It was when she stopped to eat that Ino made her move. Well, she knew that Naruto was immune to her family's signature jutsu, but she was sure that Yakumo was not. So she tried to implant false feelings of hatred towards Naruto in an effort to counteract the love she had for him. But she never got the chance to even begin since she was stopped by Yakumo herself, who was using her Ido form to frighten Ino out of her mind. Ino fled her mindscape and never tried to do it again since her Ido form was horrifying to see with one's own eyes when in Yakumo's mind. The next day, the three youngest members who made up Squad 7 arrived at the Hokage Tower at the assigned time that was given to them by their sensei, with Naruto arriving via portal while the others arrived simply walk there. He had brought breakfast once again since he had felt like cooking again for his friends since he had the time to do so and his friends enjoyed his cooking. Now here they were just waiting for Kakashi to arrive so as to get whatever mission they would receive for the day. "So Naruto," said Sasuke as he took a bite out of a donut that Naruto had made. He brought a whole box full of them that he made himself, such as glazed, apple fritters, cinnamon twists, jelly-filled, bear claws, as well as donut holes, since he had to do something with them, so he thought to bake them as well. Sasuke was a fan of the apple fritters, while Yakumo loved the bear claws. Naruto smiled as he saw his friends enjoy his baking. "What are the plans for today?" "Well," said Naruto as he ate a glazed donut himself and sipped coffee that he freshly brewed from the beans that were grown within the massive greenhouse that the sanctum had. "To be honest, I have no clue. It depends on what mission Kakashi gives us whenever he finally arrives. Apparently he has already forgotten our deal so that he wouldn't be tardy." "No, I have not," said Kakashi as he appeared in a swirl of leaves the second that Naruto had said that. "I was just held up like all the other Jonin instructors in a meeting with the Hokage." "Oh well," said Naruto with a slight nod of his head, since it was perfectly understandable to be late like he was if he was stuck in a meeting. "We can't fault you for that since you had to follow orders. Would you like some breakfast?" "Depends on what is being offered," responded Kakashi with an eye smile, "because I am honestly hoping that it is another muffin like the one from yesterday." "Sorry to say it, but no muffins today," said Naruto as he held up the box of donuts so that Kakashi could reach in and pick out the one he wanted. He picked out a jelly-filled one and ate it with gusto as Naruto conjured up a cup and poured some coffee for him. He summoned up some sugar as well as some creme to make the perfect cup before he handed it to Kakashi. He took a sip while covering his face with a copy of Icha Icha, and he had to admit that it was perfect. "That has got to be the best cup of coffee that I have ever had in my life," said Kakashi before he downed it all in a few gulps and handed the cup back to Naruto, who then used magic to send it away. "What type of coffee is that?" "A type that is unavailable anywhere else," said Naruto. He didn't want to go into details about the fact that the coffee was from a country known as Peru. Since if he did that he would have to explain the geography of another world in another dimension, and he had neither the drive nor the time to explain all that to Kakashi of all people. "So if you want more of it you will have to get it through me. So feel free to ask for it if you wish for more since I grow my own coffee beans in my garden." "Duly noted," said Kakashi, "but now we must discuss what we are to do for today. For the time being, our squad is going to complete D-ranked missions to help establish a sense of teamwork within this group." "Does it look like we need to work on our teamwork?" asked Sasuke with a raised eyebrow, "because we really don't need it." "I honestly believe it when you say that," said Kakashi, "but this is how all squads start out when they are formed. They complete D-ranked missions until the Hokage deems them ready to accomplish higher ranked ones. So for the next week, I want you to complete at least one mission a day, but feel free to complete more if you are capable of doing so and are up to it. Can you handle that at least?" "Can we handle?" asked Naruto sarcastically, "do you have so little faith in us?" "No," said Kakashi with a bit of a nervous chuckle, since he did not want to piss off Naruto or his squad, since that did not end well the first time he did so. "But I will leave you to choose your own mission. We shall meet here again in 1 week's time." With that, Kakashi vanished in a swirl of leaves, just as he had appeared not too long ago. "Well then," said Naruto as he used his arm to gesture towards the door that separated them from the mission hall, where they would choose and begin the first mission they took up as a squad. "Shall we choose our mission to undertake for the day?" "Yes," said Yakumo as she walked by him, but as she did she made sure to give him a quick kiss on the cheek. Naruto walked behind her as Sasuke could only chuckle to himself. Once inside, they met the man on duty at the time who showed them the various missions that they could take on, and as they saw what was available they were a bit disheartened. When they heard the term mission they had thought that the job offered would be something that was actually shinobi related in some way, but it turned out that D-ranked missions were nothing more than chores that civilians either didn't want to do themselves or couldn't do themselves, since they either were too old or physically incapable of doing it. In the end, they decided to take the one they deemed the easiest, which was catching a cat that belonged to the wife of the fire daimyo. Its name was Tora. And they were wrong to think that since the cat was far trickier to capture than they initially thought. She was an evasive cat, this Naruto had to admit, but in the end, Naruto simply put the creature to sleep with a simple spell and then took her back to her owner. The fire daimyo's wife was there to collect her prized pet and roughly snuggled her to the point that it appeared that she would squeeze the life out of the poor thing. Naruto put two and two together here and saw clearly why the poor thing ran away so much, since he would most likely do the same exact thing if he was in the poor animal situation. Once the mission scroll was signed off by the Hokage, they all went back to the mission hall to deliver it and collect payment for the mission. As they left, Naruto told his squad that he would see them tomorrow and then separated from the group, but not before he got a kiss from Yakumo on the lips. He walked for a bit before he ran into Shikamaru, along with an older man who was essentially an older version of him. He took a quick once-over and came to the realization that the man was his father. "Hello Shikamaru," said Naruto with a smile as he saw his rival in the game of shogi. "How goes it with your squad so-called team-building missions?" "Simply troublesome," said Shikamaru with a sigh, since just like Naruto, he had expected to do something more shinobi-related instead of common chores. "We had to help pull weeds in a field for the last few hours. We were lucky that it was a small field since it would have taken forever otherwise." "I understand where you are coming from," said Naruto, "we just had to help a woman whose cat had run away." "Wow," said Shikamaru as he rubbed his head a bit, "and here I thought our mission was bad. I heard plenty of stories about that cat since it constantly keeps running away and then someone, mainly newly made squad such as us, are tasked to find it." "So this is the same Naruto who you said that keeps beating you in shogi?" asked Shikamaru's father. "That I am," said Naruto with a simple smile. "I take it that you are his father?" "Yes," said the man as he held up his hand to shake his, Shikaku Nara. "Nice to meet you, good sir. So do you play shogi as well?" "I do in fact play," said the man with a smirk on his face, "since I am the one who taught my son how to play so well." "Why do you ask, are you challenging me to a game?" "I will admit that the idea has piqued my interest," said Naruto with a smile, "so shall we?" "But how can we play the game if there is no board to play on?" asked Shikaku with a raised eyebrow. Shikamaru only sighed and mumbled troublesome, since he knew that Naruto could conjure a board if and when he needed one. And just like he expected, Naruto conjured up a table with a couple of chairs to sit on. On the table was a shogi board with all the pieces set up to play. "Allow me to make this game more interesting," said Naruto with a smile, "since in my life I have come to the realization that when you incentivize people with something they truly desire, they do their best at the task at hand." "I'm curious as to what this idea of yours is," said Shikaku. "Simple. I have heard from Shikamaru's complaining over the years that you as well as he have to deal with your wife, who is rather abusive when it comes to hitting either of you with a frying pan. So my deal is simply this, if either of you, now or any time in the future, can beat me in a game of shogi, then I will teach you the mystical art of invisibility so that you may laze about at your own leisure without fear of being found out." The look of shock on their faces was utterly priceless to observe. Naruto saw that they had the ability to learn minor spells, since their magical aura that surrounded them was minor to say the least. And invisibility was not that complicated to learn, since it was the act of maintaining it that was a challenge. The two of them could not believe that Naruto would offer up the one thing that they had always dreamed of over the years. They didn't even think that invisibility was even possible like he was claiming, and Naruto caught on to their disbelief. So with a small twirl of his finger that formed a rune, his body simply vanished from their sight. He then reappeared since he just wanted them to see that it was possible. "As you can see," said Naruto with a smile, "it is possible to become invisible. Now all you have to do is simply beat me at this game, and the ability to hide from your wife shall be yours to use at your own leisure. So shall we begin?" Shikaku smiled as he nodded his head, making the first move to what he hoped was victory. Several hours later. Naruto had begun to head back home to the sanctum as Shikaku and his son cried in tears. They had both challenged Naruto multiple times, with each loss only aggravating them more, but they would not stop until they acquired invisibility for themselves. But in the end they were unsuccessful like the time before. Naruto left them with a shogi board, which he explained he put an experience rune onto. The rune made a spiritual copy of himself to play them at any time, and if and or when they beat it, the rune would disappear and they will have won, and he would teach them what he promised. So Naruto left them to do as they wanted as he opened a portal to head back and then closed it up behind him. 1 week later. The past week had been a major turning point in the lives of Squad 7. Naruto had seen the potential in the mystical arts and told them so. So the offer to train them was given, and just as he expected they accepted it without a moment's hesitation, since they were fairly interested in the subject. So he opened a portal for them to the sanctum and they entered it. Naruto had laughed as Yakumo had run off with eyes full of wonder at the mystical school. The thing about the place though was that without an understanding of magic, even the basics of the art itself, it was impossible to go anywhere in the place. Hell, he laughed hard along with Sasuke as they saw her leave through one door and appeared in another that led back towards the entrance area. Naruto explained that the place was protected by so many magical enchantments that unless she had a guide who could use magic like he could, she would not be able to navigate the premises. So with that in mind he took the time to show them all the various different rooms which took quite a while to do since it was massive to say the least. But he had 7 months to teach them the basics of magic, which they did very well. For Yakumo, her specialty was illusions, which was no surprise to either Sasuke or Naruto. Yet Sasuke had the unique ability to summon spirit animals, as well as control flesh and blood ones, both mythical as well as realistic ones, which actually surprised Naruto, since he didn't expect him to have that ability. Naruto could do it as well, but the Ancient One had told him that the ability was exceedingly rare. So with the skills they possessed in mind, he took them to the massive library and sat them down as he piled large stacks of books on the tables and told them to begin reading them. They didn't want to, but Naruto explained that this was how every new recruit would start since the various books went into details about the different types of magic. Only when one understood the fundamentals could they begin the practice of the art itself. While they read up on all that they would need to know to understand magic at its basic level, Naruto had been in the observatory. It was a place where he was able to peer into near infinite multiverses. He had not been allowed within this room while the Ancient One was still around since she stated the time was not right for him to peer elsewhere in the universe. It was only now that he was within this room looking through the infinity sphere, a magical artifact capable of seeing beyond his dimension, that he understood her words, since seeing into the other dimensions took a lot out of him to do, since so much magic was needed to maintain a connection, so as to see. He did this to find others who could train his friends in various things that he could not teach. Just like when the Ancient One had brought Iron Fist to the sanctum, so as to train him in hand-to-hand combat, since she herself lacked such a thing. He searched for quite some time before he found the perfect teacher for each of them, one who specialized in illusions for Yakumo, and one who could teach Sasuke how to master the ways of what he assumed were mix of druids and shaman, since as far as he knew there was not a name for people who magically used animals exclusively. Sure, they were used for a variety of different things such as familiars as well as transformation, but there was no name for it. Or at least he was able to find one for Yakumo, but he was not able to find one for Sasuke when it came to his type of magic. So he found him a teacher to master the blade, which if he was honest with himself he should train in himself, but he never really got around to mastering the art since he had so many other things to master that took up most of his time. For Yakumo, he found a woman who went by the name Enchantress. Sure, the woman was a villain in her home dimension, but her illusionary skills were exceptional, and she would make the perfect teacher for Yakumo if she could be convinced to do so. What Naruto did was establish a mental link of a magical nature that put her as well as himself in an empty white room so that they could speak on equal terms. Here their magic meant nothing since it was a neutral zone, which was good in Naruto's case since he was still fairly young in the broad scheme of things since this woman had been alive longer than he had. She had been utterly furious about the whole thing since she did not like either the fact that she was pulled into this place without her consent, nor did her powers work so that she could smite the brat before her that had managed to do so. He had simply waited for her to calm down so as to talk to her in a civil manner, which took quite a while since she was a prideful woman with a hot temper. When she finally calmed down, he explained who he was, a potential sorcerer supreme of another dimension from her own. He went on to explain that he had called upon her via magical link so as to ask for her help in training someone in her illusionary abilities. She had begun to laugh hysterically in a haughty nature for what seemed like forever before she finally calmed down from it. She had then simply demanded to know why he possibly thought she would teach anyone anything. Naruto had simply played on her pride and stated that she was one of the best illusionists he had seen in various dimensions. This caused her to smile in pride since she loved to be praised like he was doing. He went on to state that by helping train another person to wield even a fraction of her power in a dimension not her own, that her name would be known to any and all who learned from the student afterwards. This realization made her think heavily about it for a while as this information played in her mind. In the end she agreed to do as was asked of her, but she warned that her training would be cruel as hers had been. Naruto had agreed to it and stated that the dimension he was native to was no stranger to harsh training, and with that the link was shattered and the two of them went their separate ways for now. In time Naruto had used his magical power to open a portal to the dimension that Enchantress was from so that she herself would be able to pass through, which she did. Once there he went on to explain that she was only allowed in certain rooms while the others were protected via his native dimension seals, and once she was done that she would be able to leave via the same portal she came through. To prove a point, he sealed her in a transparent box made from the seals and asked her to break through it. She tried, but to her fury she was unable to break through it since the power source behind it was not magical as well as unknown to her, so she had no way to break the seal. Once the point had been made, he unsealed her temporary prison and then introduced her to Yakumo. Yakumo had been intimidated by her at first, but in time that fear dwindled away. Yakumo did this to get stronger so that she would never be a hindrance to Naruto, which Enchantress picked up on quite easily and smirked to herself since she would aid the young lady in the pursuit of the man she was infatuated with. For Sasuke, who he could not find a proper teacher to train him in his magical expertise like he wanted to find, he found someone who was vastly skilled in the use of the blade. His name was Logan, yet he was known to the world as Wolverine. Unlike Enchantress, Logan was easily convinced to train someone since the man was at one point a teacher himself at a school full of mutants like himself. Sasuke was trained in a brutal way, with the instructions to come at him with true killing intent. Logan could heal from any and all damage done to his person, so he was the perfect person to teach what it truly felt like to kill via piercing through vital organs. While Sasuke had been trained in the art of the sword, he lacked the realistic aspect of it since he had no real-world training to go with it. While they did that, Naruto completed the missions that the squad needed to do once a day. They were fairly easy with the help of magic, with the biggest mission he took being helping to clear out an entire field to help grow crops. The elderly farmer had explained that he usually hired a large group of people to help do it, but he hurt himself and the medical bills drained a bit too much of his money so that he could not afford the large group. Naruto had simply nodded and called upon the might of the Gaia, the Greek deity of earth, to essentially till the fields, as well as absorb the weeds. The elderly man nearly had a heart attack as he saw a young man do the work of so many within the span of a few minutes by himself. There were various other jobs such as painting things, babysitting children, and walking animals. The one mission that got to him was having to hunt down Tora yet again this week, but this time the outcome had gone far differently. Naruto had seen what Tora's owner had done to her the last time she was brought back to her literally abusive form of loving embrace, and so this time he offered the poor feline a new home within the sanctum instead. The cat had jumped into his arms willingly and purred loudly as she rubbed against him with all the happiness she could muster. One of the many things he had learned over the years in his training was that some animals had a natural gift of seeing through magic and getting around it in some way. Cats were one of the most well-known types to be able to do so, and Tora made herself at home as she went in search of a comfy place to nap the day away moments upon Naruto walking through the portal into the sanctum and dream of a new life away from the woman who nearly constantly crushed her to death. She was a curious feline, and she made Naruto laugh from time to time, since she would randomly appear in the strangest of places at the most random of times. Naruto had gone back and lied to the woman and told her that Tora had been killed and eaten by a wild animal in the forest of death. She had cried as was expected, but Naruto was there to console her, since it was the least he could do after lying to her face about Tora. He had a feeling that she would get another pet in the future and could only hope she didn't smother it like she did with Tora, since then they would once again be the mission of finding the runaway animal in the future. As Naruto and his squad trained in the art of magic, Narumi and Natsumi were being trained into the ground to recover their lost strength, since the main source of it had been literally ripped from them. For years they had trained to use the Kyuubi's energy as their own, but now that they no longer had access to it anymore, they had to train to use and rely on their own strength, which was quite impressive being Uzumaki, as well as the children of two powerful infamous shinobi. They were strong kunoichi, just like their mother, but they had been weakened as a result of the demonic extraction. So after a non-stop week-long cram session of training and exercises with the aid of Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune along with their mother Kushina, they were very nearly back to their peak strength. Naruto had to deal with multiple girls while his squad trained within the sanctum. They all continuously asked him out on a date, uncaring that he was already in a relationship, stating that they were a better choice for him, claiming that their clan was a better known one, or simply that they were either prettier or stronger than Yakumo. By the end of the week Naruto had enough of them constantly insulting Yakumo like they were, so he proposed a simple challenge to them to prove that she was indeed stronger than they all claimed they knew she was. He told them to pick one person out of their group to face Yakumo in a one-on-one match. If she won then they would stop pestering him for a date, but if she lost then he would break up with her. The girls were all giddy at hearing this since they felt like they could easily beat Yakumo, and so they chose Tenten, the oldest in the group with the most experience, to be the challenger. Naruto simply nodded and told them that he will tell them the date of the fight later, once he told Yakumo about it, and once that was said they all left with smiles on their faces as they dreamed of having him as their boyfriend. Now Naruto was no cheater, nor did he make this bet out of some sort of hatred towards Yakumo in any sense. He simply understood the minds of young girls with crushes, since he had researched the subject in a few books when he had the chance the moment that he acquired so many fangirls in school. The more the person of their affection rejected them, the more they would attempt to woo said person, and he had Sakura as the perfect proof that that was exactly how it went. So he made this bet as a way to stop all this and nip it in the bud. They thought Ikumo was weak, and because of that biased view they thought that she would be easily beaten, but she was strong even before he began her magical training. Plus, even in the 1 in a million chance that she lost, he would simply dump her as he said he would, wait 5 seconds, and then ask her out again to renew their relationship. He only stated he would dump her, he never said anything about staying separated from her. By the end of the week, the 2 members of the squad who were still training had at least mastered the art of creating a portal to and from the sanctum, so they could resume their training at their own pace like he himself had done. Once they did that, they each picked their own room, with Yakumo picking one that was right next to Naruto's, which once again was no surprise to him or Sasuke, to move their stuff into. The both of them wanted to move into the sanctum since it was a chance at a fresh start for themselves. Sasuke didn't wish to stay in a room that was surrounded by the empty homes of his slain clan members, since all it did was bring back bad memories of the past. Yakumo never felt welcome in her own clan home, so the move was great for her, since a change of scenery did wonders. Once their things were moved in and their rooms were renovated into the way they wanted them to be, Naruto then used his magical power to link up each of their rooms to the time of their natural dimension like his own was. Now they stood before Minato with their sensei Kakashi as Naruto handed over the 7 mission scrolls that he had completed over the past week. They all had notes from the client who sang high praise of Naruto's abilities and stated they would recommend using him again in the future if they need his assistance. "Well, I am happy to say," started Minato after he had read all the reports which sang so much praise towards his son, "that due to the overwhelming positive feedback from various clients, as well as the fact that you, or at least one of you, have the combat knowledge to challenge as well as beat a cage-level shinobi, I have decided that your squad is ready to take on a C-class mission." "Thank you, sir," said Kakashi with a nice smile. He was happy to know that his squad was doing so well, while the others were not doing as well as his own. For the longest of times he had failed multiple groups that he had been assigned since they could not pass his bell test. So to see one not only break the cycle but excel beyond the other squads as well was a welcome change in his book. "So what is the mission?" asked Naruto, who was glad to see that they had graduated from doing simple chores to hopefully something that could actually be considered a legitimate mission. He wanted the genuine experience of life that could not be taught in books or by a teacher. "This will be a joint mission with another squad," said Minato, who as soon as he said that Naruto knew exactly who they would be partnered up with and understood the very reason that they were being partnered up with them, to escort our client back to his home in Wave Country. "If this is such a low-class escort mission," asked Sasuke, who was looking at the bigger picture here as he was wont to do, "why do we need 2 squads to do it if at most all we will be fighting against is some bandits or the like?" "It never hurts to be prepared for the unknown," said Minato in a sage-like tone of voice, "plus Squad 11 needs some experience on missions away from home as well." The look on Sasuke's face was priceless once he heard who they were going with. Since it was Squad 11 they were traveling with, that meant that Sakura was coming, and since it was a mission he could not simply run away from her obsessive proclamations of love as he always did. His face turned white for a split second before the color returned to his face. "So who is it that we are protecting?" asked Naruto since he was listening to every detail since he was trained to do so. "A man by the name of Tazuna," said Minato as he handed Kakashi the official mission scroll. "Be warned though, since our scouts have stated an increase of bandit activity on the roads towards Wave. You will meet the man at the front gates at 8 in the morning, so don't be late for the mission." As Minato said that, the 3 members of Squad 7 looked at Kakashi directly. Kakashi's sweat dropped as they looked at him like that since the man was infamously known for his tardiness. He simply chuckled nervously and told them that he would be there on time before he and the rest of the squad left the room to do their own thing to pass the time until the assigned time. Minato sighed as he saw them leave, since his main plan had not gone as planned. The initial plan he had in mind was to keep Naruto and his squad doing D-ranked missions to the point that they got sick of it and all but demanded one of a higher rank than they were allowed to do since their squad had just been formed. It would be then that he would subtly mention that he would consider it if Naruto transferred to Squad 11 to join his sisters and mother. So in the end either Naruto, who cared for his squad from what he could see, would accept of his own volition, or his squad would turn on him in a fashion that would break him down and still do it. But that was not the case since Naruto flawlessly did his job in a manner that everyone who he helped gave him praise for his work. So he knew that this plan would not work because of that fact alone and just decided to have the 2 squads work together. He could only hope that they were able to make a connection on the mission. The next day. The 2 squads met with the client by the gate the next day at the assigned time. He made muffins for the group, including Squad 11, which they enjoyed thoroughly. Sure, he had no love for them as family, but they were still allies to the village who he was working with at the moment, so he would share food that he prepared without any sort of fuss. Their client was an elderly man who reeked so much of the alcohol he consumed. He had literally taken one look at the group he had hired to protect him for this mission and complained that he didn't believe that he was getting his money's worth for his protection detail. Naruto and his squad simply let that insult pass by them, since they didn't care what the man thought, since they didn't need validation to know they were strong, yet Natsumi and Narumi were very vocal about it, since they had their pride as Uzumaki. But Kushina was able to calm them down, easily being their mother and all that, and once they were calmed down, they finally set out towards their first mission out of the village. There had been a slight hiccup with Sakura pestering Sasuke for a date consistently again and again, but luckily for him, he had studied up on a silencing spell to negate this kind of thing, which was easy to cast. It was also easy to dispel as well, but Sakura had not been taught magic in any way, so she could not break it. Naruto saw her glare at him since she knew that Naruto had taught him to do this to her, and she was quite pissed about it. As the groups walked towards their destination, both Kakashi as well as Kushina conversed with Tazuna. Naruto was reading a tome he had begun studying, all the while ignoring his sister's attempts at conversing with him. He saw through peripheral vision that they were getting far more pissed with every attempt of them starting a conversation being ignored like that, yet it did not bother him, since he did not care in the slightest. Nothing really happened for the next hour and a half, but then Naruto, who was in front of the group, held up his hand to stop them. While he was reading the tome, he was still fully aware of what was around him, like the two puddles that were on the ground in front of them. Does anyone else find this situation odd? Asked Naruto to the rest of the group. I do, said Sasuke as he looked at Tazuna. Hey old man. Did it rain when you came this way heading towards our village? No, said Tazuna in confusion since he was not sure of what was happening. Well then that makes this whole scene far stranger than one would first suspect, said Naruto with a sigh as he closed the tome with one hand and then held it under his arm as he held out his other towards the puddles. A magical seal appeared in front of his hand that changed colors from the orange it usually was to a purplish blue that shot out two individual arcs of lightning that hit their targets. The voltage that he used was not lethal, but it did hurt like hell for the two men who appeared since their illusion was shattered now. And a word of advice to the two of you for the future, if you wish to use that illusion to trick people, you should do it near water or where it rains. The two men looked at each other for a brief second before they charged forward. They each had a gauntlet on their hands that had a chain connecting them. Naruto stood his ground as they neared him and powered up his hands with Kai before he chopped the chain in half. The men had tried to wrap him in it since the chain was barbed and would rip him apart if their plan had succeeded. But now their main plan had failed and Yakumo and Sasuke had capitalized on their surprise to deliver their own blows towards the men to send them back a bit. Well, the one Sasuke punched went back further than Yakumo's. That was to be expected given the fact that Sasuke was physically stronger than her. Sasuke then moved swiftly and charged forward with a kunai in hand, which he used to try and slash the man's throat. The man was quick enough to dodge the kunai strike, but Sasuke was planning on this since he conjured up a spirit snake that extended his reach further than what the man had planned on and was bitten by it. The power infused within it caused the man to stiffen since it was a paralyzing form of magic that had been imbued with. Yakumo did not have such magic to utilize as her own, but she did still have the weapon that Naruto had gifted her when she was gifted the grimoire. She pulled it out and as she did a seal appeared on it that she stuck her hand through and grabbed a hold of the object inside. What she pulled out was a large paintbrush with a thick dark wooden handle that was engraved with runes to make sure that the ink on the tip never dried out nor did it run out. Naruto had made this since he knew that she was an artist and with the tool he gave her, she could once again make her paintings come to life like she could in her illusionary world that the Ido took her to. She smirked as she swiped the air in front of her with ink floating there. Out of the ink came two large sharks made of the ink that flew through the air and each took a chunk out of her opponent before they disappeared. The damage was too extensive for him and he would bleed out within minutes. Good work team, said Naruto with a smile, it would seem that you are retaining your lessons well. How did you do that? Asked Natsumi with stars in her eyes as she and her sister crowded Yakumo. They had never seen something like that and they wanted to know how in the hopes that they might learn it themselves if they asked kindly enough. Yakumo didn't answer them as she picked up her tool with her hand. The thing was about half her size and yet she was easily able to lift it up. What she was unaware of was that this was by design so that only she may wield the brush herself. She then channeled magic through it and watched it turn into a crimson orb that flew back into the grimoire that it had come from. Man, I am glad I hired you guys, said Tazuna with a laugh as he saw three youngsters who he had honestly thought were weak to defeat fully grown men. Oh, don't thank us yet, said Naruto with a sigh. This caught the others off guard since it was an odd thing to say, but they saw what he meant by that when out of the blue, the air got misty around them, which was far unusual given the area as well as the time of year. Both squads surrounded Tazuna as they heard someone laughing in the mist. So it would seem that Leaf Shinobi live up to the hype, said the voice of their attacker, and what is this? And Uzumaki. I have heard so much about your clan and I feel so happy that I get to kill one of the last ones alive. It will be a nice notch on my killing streak. I won't be killed that easily, said Kushina as she growled in anger at the fact that this person saw her as an easy target. She would not shame her family and die like this person wanted her to, nor would she be used as a bragging tool for a sadistic asshole who wanted to tell others that they managed to kill her. She then sensed that something was being swung towards her, which she pulled out her own blade to block it. It was a massive blade wielded by a man with a bandaged face. The man smirked at her as he jumped back before he threw his blade towards Tazuna. He had been hired to kill the bridge builder and he wanted to get it over with so that he could take his time and kill the rest of them at his own leisure. Yet to his surprise, Naruto stopped the blade in midair, which was apparent by his glowing hand, which he then used 2 fingers to flick the blade with. The vibrations he sent through it shattered the blade down to the hilt, which Naruto then tossed underhand back towards the man, since it was of no use to him now. Did you truly believe that that would work? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow as he conjured up his own blade, or someone known as the Demon of the Mist. You have just hindered yourself by sacrificing your blade. Is that what you think? Said the man as he grabbed the handle of his broken blade, that I would just throw my blade away for no reason. Foolish boy, but I will admit that your ability to destroy it was fairly impressive. What is your name? My name is Naruto, said Naruto as he kept his blade sheathed. And I know who you are, Zabuza, so there is no need to introduce yourself. Naruto had read a recent bingo book within the last week since his teacher had always told him to be prepared and to know thy enemy, so he had done his research on the various threats his world had to throw at him. You know who I am and yet you still foolishly plan to attack me like some sort of hero? Asked Zabuza. Because allow me to break it to you, there are no heroes in this world, kid, only those with the strength to survive. Well, I agree with your statement of there being no heroes, said Naruto seriously, but I do not see my actions as foolish. More like fulfilling my obligation since I as well as the others here were paid to protect our client. Well, there are no true heroes, there will always be those to protect those who can't protect themselves. Well, I have a feeling that you will entertain me for a bit, said Zabuza as he dipped his blade's handle into the blood of the man who had been killed by the ink sharks which had pulled onto the ground. Naruto's eyebrow rose as he saw the blood suck up into it and reform the blade back into its original form. I will admit that you have a unique blade there, said Naruto in genuine interest since while he had practiced and learned so many various forms of magic, this was something new to him. Naruto would most likely have said more if he didn't sense the dome of water that Zabuza had summoned up to surround the two of them. While he would kill the rest, he was not a fool to try and take them out all at once. No, he would eliminate the major threats first and then take his time to slaughter the kids playing shinobi to teach them a lesson that they would take with them into the depths of hell itself. Well then, said Zabuza as his eyes glinted with murderous glee, entertain me, boy. He then performed several hand signs that made the immediate area thick with mist, but since the area was condensed in a dome, it was far thicker than normal. Interesting technique you have there, said Naruto calmly as he heard Zabuza chuckle in the mist, but it will not aid you against me. And just how do you expect to defeat me if you can't even see me? And what gave you the impression that I couldn't see you, said Naruto with a smirk. He channeled power into his blade so that it floated by his person as he used his fingers to form a triangle before the pendant he had on him. The gears within it began to turn as it became active, and once Naruto felt its power unleashed, he called upon its power. Eye of Agamotto cast out this illusion. With the pulse of power, the mist surrounding him disappeared, leaving Zabuza exposed. Zabuza smirked as he saw Naruto was not holding his blade and used another hand sign that condensed the water in the dome into a water sphere prison with Naruto inside. Now while the man expected Naruto to struggle and try in vain to break free, he was strangely calm and not even holding his breath. He held up his hand with a blue glyph appearing within it. This caused the water to freeze, which shocked Zabuza that this boy had such an ability at his disposal. The ice cracked, which caused Zabuza to jump out of the way in fear that it would explode out in a way that could hurt him. Yet this did not happen since to even more of his shock Naruto was not even in it anymore. Zabuza felt as his body seized up as Naruto placed a magical glyph on his back that paralyzed him. He fell forward and hit the ground face first with a growl. Those in Squad 11 as well as Kakashi had a look of surprise on their faces to see Naruto single-handedly defeat a man with such a notorious reputation as Zabuza. So is there more to this mission than what was first discussed? Asked Naruto towards Tazuna as he levitated Zabuza closer to the rest of the group, since if a A-rank missing nin was trying to kill you, then there has to be more to it. Tazuna sighed since Naruto had been right in his assumption. So he explained the situation that had befallen his village that had been taken over by a greedy businessman named Gato. The man had taken over all the ports via purchasing them all and taxing the country to its knees. Tazuna and his friends were building a bridge to break the hold that Gato had on the place, and it was because of that Gato wanted Tazuna dead, since a bridge would break his hold on the island country. He had not been honest with them since they did not have the proper funds to hire shinobi to aid them and had played it off as an escort mission in hopes that they would aid them once there when shown the problems they were faced with. But this news being told to them, Kushina and Kakashi looked at each other for a second before they nodded and asked the rest of them if they still wanted to continue with all the risks they would most likely be faced with. The genin had all been in agreement since they wanted to help the poor man and decided to do so. Naruto had planned on sending Zabuza to Konoha to be dealt with interrogation since they were good at their job, but before he could do it, they were bombarded with multiple smoke bombs that blocked their vision. What made it worse was multiple needles were thrown into their bodies, even Naruto, which paralyzed them enough for whoever had blindsided them to extract Zabuza, and as well as the man who had attacked them with the chain that was still alive. Well, that was surprising, said Naruto with a sigh since that was unexpected. He saw as the others were trying to move, but the needles in their bodies made it all but impossible to do so. Naruto had to use magic to extract the needles from his own body so that he could move before he did the same for the rest of the group. Something else to prepare for in the future since I doubt that is the last time we will hear from whoever has taken Zabuza. The group decided to relax for a bit to get the stiffness out of their bodies from being paralyzed like they were before they headed onwards to their destination, and as they rest not one of them knew of the enemy they were going to face. Zabuza had been extracted via his hidden partner and put into a cave where he could rest up while the partner tried to find a means to break him of his paralysis. The problem was that the partner had no idea what type of means that had been used to do it, so he had no idea how to break him of it. The seal used by Naruto was not on a timer of any sort since he had planned to take the man in alive without resistance. So while the partner was out trying to find herbs of some sort to try and heal the sole remaining demon brother since his wounds could be tended to, and this left Zabuza all alone while enraged that he had been beaten in such a humiliating fashion by a brat. He swore that he would find some means to counter the boy's abilities, and once he did he would skin the little fuck alive in a way that would only prolong his pain tenfold. So the so-called demon of the mist is having problems with a sorcerer, said a voice in his head. Who the hell is there? Asked Zabuza as he looked around the cave. He was pissed that he would not be able to defend himself if this person attacked him right now. Do you seek the power to kill the boy who bested you? Asked the voice. I do, growled Zabuza in anger. Then allow me to grant it to you, said the voice. Zabuza cried out in pain as his entire body felt like it was on fire as a foreign power entered his body. The pain soon ended though, and instead he felt far more powerful than he had ever felt before as he was now able to move his body once more. Now kneel to your master. I will do as ordered, said Zabuza as he knelt down to one knee, Lord Dormammu. Dormammu smirked to himself as he felt his newest pawn submit and was looking forward to seeing just how powerful this sorcerer truly was before he eliminated him. What if banished Naruto was Doctor Strange Marvel? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.